Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at MEC Sharks and on Twitter at Sheng_Peng.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find me on Twitter at @halfwall_hockey, at my website, half-wallhockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now.
We have a great guest today, Scott Hannan, first-round pick of the Sharks in 1997. Also played over 1,000 NHL games with the Sharks and other teams. Right now, Scott is taking on a larger role on the MEC Sharks pregame live show. And also, find out which one of us is related to Scott Hannan.
You. No. So
it could be.
It could be. Well, you'll have to stick around and find out. So let's jump into it, Shang. There's going to be, and I'm really excited about the Scott Hannan interview, everybody. It's a very, very fun interview. He even talks a little bit about what he sees on the ice and stuff like that. So that was actually the really cool bit about talking with Scott. So, but this week, it was the first week of the season for the Sharks. It feels like, I guess it's been like 10 days or so since we've done a podcast. A lot's happened, and also a lot of losing has happened. I think that's the best way to put it. Why don't we start with probably the biggest, weirdest news of this week, which was the Kevin Labanc drama. So Kevin Labanc notably was scratched for the first 3 games of the season. He was the healthy scratch. He was the 13th forward, basically. And then they announced the day before the game that he was going to be playing. And then that morning at 10 a.m., Frank Seravalli on Twitter announced that he would be waived that day, which kind of goes direct contradiction to him playing in his first NHL game this year, and then getting waived at the same time. And within 30 minutes, Frank put out a tweet that basically said that the Sharks had reversed course and decided not to waive Labanc, which caused a huge snafu, I imagine, at practice skate that morning. Shang, why don't you talk a little bit about what happened that morning and what you what actually happened with Kevin Labanc?
Sure. I'm still trying to piece it together, and I guess I'll start with that. The day before, I was at practice, and I saw that Kevin was taking part with all the regular line. He was higher up, actually. He wasn't alternating on the fourth line, which he had been. He was on a regular line, and so that was looked like a sign that he was going to play. And so I asked David Quinn after practice, is Kevin Labanc going to play? And David said, yeah, he's going to play. And he talked about the big season that he was hoping for, accounting for from Labanc. So I was like, okay, all right. So Kevin's back in. I know that it has been a little bit rocky, between Labanc in his playing time and Quinn, last year being scratched last year, and also even missing these first 3 games. I mean, Labanc has been working his way back from an injury, but he was probably healthy enough. He was healthy enough to play the first 3 games, so that is a healthy scratch. Even though guys still kind of working. If it was Logan Couture, he would have been playing. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, so looked like Labanc was playing, and then as I am, I believe, driving to practice the next day, or morning skate the next day. I see a tweet that he's been waived, and look, let's be honest here. If we look at sort of, no, I don't think people batted an eye because of Labanc's sort of a salary and his, pretty good scoring history all in all. But if we're honest, though, I mean, the guy was scratched last year. The guy was scratched this year. I don't think it was it wasn't like Tomas Hertl got waived.
Sure.
It raised an eyebrow, that news, but it wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that.
Yeah.
Right. And that kind of speaks to some degree, where Labanc has kind of played himself on a roster and that sort of thing, right? That it seemed plausible that the Sharks might do that, as sort of a last resort, I had to believe that they have been looking for trade partners for him for a while, and they, can't really find anything, probably because of his contract, right? He's got a year left at 4.725. Last year, obviously, it was 2 years left, which would make it even harder to trade. Might be able to move it this year because it's expiring. But anyway, though, So yeah, so it seemed plausible. It seemed like, okay, wow, that's still surprising because literally the day before you said that he was playing.
Mhm.
But anyway, so they tell us that Quinn is going to be made available earlier that day, but it has nothing to do at that point. The Sharks hadn't put out anything about Labanc, but Quinn
Sure.
was going to be available a little bit earlier than usual that day. Again, nothing to do. I don't think it had anything to do with the Labanc stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and so anyway, as I'm getting there, to Sharks Ice, I see that okay now there's a tweet from Frank, kind of talking about reversing the course,
Yeah.
and
God, I
so
gotta. I have a few things to say about Hockey Insiders when you're done with
yeah,
the
okay.
inside report, but let's talk about.
So anyway, so I walk into practice, and I walk into the Sharks locker room, and I see that Kevin Labanc is about to talk. And I thought I thought I missed Quinn, because like I said, Quinn was supposed to go a little earlier than expected. Um, so I was like, okay, great. And so anyway, Kevin starts talking. Usually, if I roll in late, like basically, like you know, I let the reporters who are there first and who are set and prepared go first, because uh,
Sure.
they're just they're just I don't want to fly in like out of
They got
nowhere and
dibs.
start.
Yeah.
Yeah, not dibs, but just like they kind of are more set with what they want to
Mhm.
ask, kind of. But there weren't any questions though up to at after a couple minutes about just what the fuck happened this morning.
Yeah.
so,
What?
so I asked Kevin, like, Kevin, there was a report this morning that you were gonna get waived. Uh, you're still here. What's going on?
Yeah. And I imagine maybe he hadn't even checked his phone, maybe
Yeah,
because he was
yeah, yeah.
skating and stuff.
I believe that. Yeah. Anyway,
Mhm.
so from the side, and Sharks PR was like, that never happened.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wait, what do you mean that never happened? And so I was like, okay. Anyway, so Kevin said something like, yeah, like
Mhm.
I've been getting ready for the game, which he was, and and said he hadn't really been following Twitter, and like I said, that's plausible. All this had literally gone down in like an hour before we talked with him, or 45
Sure.
minutes before we talked with him, and so. So anyway, so I might have been the one to break the news to Kevin Labanc that he
He might have been waived
that
or
that
not
that
really.
that he was waived on Twitter, at least.
That he was in a Twitter rumor about
Yeah,
being waived. Yeah.
yeah, he was ex official waived.
Yeah. So
Um,
so who did you confirm with that Kevin was never gonna be waived? Like, what do we got? We've got
Sharks PR has,
Flyer,
has indicated that
the PR,
Mike Greer told
Greer.
Curtis, right? I think Curtis tweeted about it, that there was never an
Mhm.
intention to waive a LeBanc. David Quinn has said a couple of times that there's
Quinn.
never been any discussion on his, I mean, on his level, but he seemed to be suggesting even on man, like at higher levels, that
Yeah.
maybe conversations that he may not even be a part of. I mean, look, have they discussed waiving Kevin Labanc? If they haven't, then they haven't been, doing their due
Sure.
diligence, because here's a guy that's not playing, that you can't seem to trade. And so you have to, consider that as an option, I think, at least,
Mhm.
right? So, have they probably discussed it somewhere? Possibly. But yeah, I do believe there's never any intention to waive him, though. I mean, that's a pretty bold move. And if you look at it just logically, right? Like, if you want to trade Kevin Labanc, you want to get anything for him, like the
Mhm.
best course is to let him play out this year and see if he can, gain some of his value. And he's going to be expiring, and so you might be able to move him at the trade deadline, because that the team taking him on doesn't have to worry about another year, right? Another year of commitment at a high price tag to him.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't make sense for the
Yeah.
Sharks to waive him, unless like Kevin really, really wanted out because he was unhappy about getting scratched or something like that, which was sort of the first thought in my head when I first saw the tweet that he was going to get waived. That
Mhm.
um, he just was that unhappy, and he wanted out so much that he asked out. And of course, at the moment, there's not going to be a lot of trade offers for a guy that's been healthy scratch for 3 straight games, right? And so it's kind of like what Detroit did with Zadina over the summer. They waived him too, just to kind of show, like, look, there isn't a market, for you and your contract. Yeah, for you and your contract, right? And so that's along the lines of where I thought they were at when I first saw that tweet. But like I said, though, like, if you're trying to get some value for Kevin while you still can, I mean, I would be surprised if Kevin Labanc is with the Sharks next year.
Sure.
But if you want to try to get some value for him, like this year, even like like a 5th-round pick or just literally anything, right? Like, again, the best thing to do is to let him play out this year, and hopefully he grabs a job and he puts him some points, and you can move him possibly at the deadline for something, for anything, right? And so that's why the waiving thing made sense, but didn't make sense in some ways to me. So anyway, to go back to the day of situation, then Quinn comes out, and Quinn Quinn talks about, like, we've never had any discussions, I don't know where that came from, etc., etc. And so Kevin played, and Kevin actually played pretty well against Boston. I think he actually played pretty well last night too, except for being on the ice when Mackenzie Blackwood got jumped or body slammed.
Yeah, and then nothing happened.
but anyway, though, like
so we've got Kevin, we've got Greer, Quinn, Sharks PR. Do we get Kevin's agent?
Yeah, I've reached out, and so I haven't heard back. So maybe there is a story there. I will say that, like, I doubt that like Frank made it up out of thin air. So
no, I think there's a rumor there. It's just I have a little bit of a rant. So
go ahead.
Go
off, King.
So basically, like, there's like 2 different types of like hockey insight. There's people like Pierre LeBrun who don't speculate and they just report or they break news, right? There's people like Elliot Friedman who do both speculation and reporting. So like on their show is a lot of speculation, but they preface it with, this is speculation.
Right.
And then there's Frank. And the problem with what's going on with Frank is that he's putting out stuff that's false. And once you do that repeatedly, people stop listening to you as a hockey insider. Like, if you do it one time and something messes up and you have a reason why it messes up, great, it's fine. People forgive you. But this is the second time in a couple months, because the first one was, what I remember was that John Gibson, he put out a story that John Gibson's agent said he'll never play again for Anaheim. And John Gibson and his agent both said that's false, and then he's now playing for Anaheim. So it was like and there's a little bit of plausibility there where he's like, oh, well, like, he said it, but like, I can't prove that he said it, kind of thing. And people called him out on it. They said, this is bad reporting. You can't just say that like a player said this without any actual hard proof or evidence. You can't just put it out there. It sounds like speculation, or it sounds made up. And then this one is, not only is it like speculation, he then put the blame on the Sharks. He said they reversed course, and that's why my information is false. Not like my source is false or my source is wrong. He said it was the Sharks who did, like, oh, they waived him, and then never mind, they said no 30 minutes later. Like, which makes absolutely no sense to do, I think, especially when you've announced the guy is going to be in the lineup. So I honestly don't know where the truth is there, and he didn't make it up out of thin air. Something might have happened, but I think his source is very, very wrong in this aspect, and he shouldn't put it out with being 100% sure, because it's like a player transaction. That's
right.
But more than just like a guy doesn't like playing for his team. That's a transaction, and that's something that people will remember, is that you're wrong. So that's my own thing about hockey insiders, is that they shouldn't be. If you're going to speculate, claim it's speculation, and if you're going to say it's the truth, then it has to be the truth.
Sure. To clarify with the John Gibson story, Frank said that John Gibson has asked for a trade, nothing to do with his agent, and he has said, I am not playing another game for the Anaheim Ducks. And then Gibson's agent responded and said that the goalie had never told the Ducks that he wouldn't play for them.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, and
A
also
little
too,
bit more
I
clarity
believe
there,
that
sure.
John Gibson has played for the Sharks this year. Or I'm sorry, for the
Or
Ducks this
he
year.
has, yeah.
But
So
specifically to this though, yeah, I think that I think we're still waiting to hear, want to hear Frank out. Frank has got a lot of stuff right too.
of course.
Frank is the man who single-handedly ruined the expansion draft for
Mhm.
all viewers across America, and good for him too. He was doing his job. He got the information. He was right, I think, on every one of them. Right, so his source was very,
Oh, yeah,
very
the source
solid
was rock
talk there.
solid. Somebody in the
Um,
league for sure.
so so he also has got a ton right.
Mhm.
But of course, though, yeah, when you have these high profile, and this little bank one is particularly, the Gibson one was one thing where it's I guess if you look at the details of it, like, if Gibson didn't tell anybody on the Ducks and Frank said they did, then that's different. But
Mhm.
I think here is a little it's worse in some ways, even though it's a lesser profile player.
Yeah.
Insofar as that this was a hard transaction that he reported as it's happening. This is done, or this will
Yeah.
be done, right?
Mhm.
And there has been no indication, yes, that like there was any sort of reversing of a course that Frank suggested. And I do tend to care. I do. I don't always just believe everything management says, or Sharks say, or Greer says, or Quinn says, right? But
Sure.
here it makes sense to me though, because like I mentioned, it doesn't. It didn't really make sense for the Sharks to waive Kevin unless Kevin insisted on leaving.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess though I don't think Frank has really addressed it since the day of, and so I'm waiting for him to address it further. And
Mhm.
so I'm gonna kind of hold out some judgment, but it is not a good look for
Yeah, but
reporters in
say,
general.
like,
And yes, go ahead.
if you had a good source and you believed
Hmm.
your source, and then
Yeah.
you put out a thing, somebody gets waived, right? Like,
Hmm.
you're the first person to break it for the Sharks or whatever, um, and you were wrong, you wouldn't say, like, the Sharks reversed course. Like,
Well,
you
we
would
don't.
just say, "I was wrong. It's not this player, it's this player," or it's, wrong thing. So, I don't know, it just seems like such a very, especially because they put him in the practice line the day before, and that would be, like, screwing up your coach to be like, "Oh, by the way, that guy that you just put in, I'm waiving him." Unless, like, they talked about it beforehand or something,
Right.
but
I
I
mean that part of it though, like again, until we hear more from Frank about it,
Mhm.
like, yeah, I mean, right now it doesn't look like the reversing course like that. That doesn't. I don't believe that's what happened, but
Yeah,
until we hear more from Frank about it, then
sure.
get any kind of sort of explanation. I don't know, and I'm not going to
Yeah, me
speculate
too.
on what could have happened. Like who he talked to that might have indicated that this was going to happen. And yeah, I do agree though that if that's not what happened, if the Sharks didn't reverse, then he shouldn't say that. Of course, he should just say
Mhm.
like my source was wrong. I messed up, and then
Yeah.
then we move on from there, kind of. But we don't. I don't know though. Maybe
Yeah,
there was
we don't know.
maybe something was in motion with the Sharks. I don't know. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Again, it's not. As I mentioned, it's not implausible that the Sharks would waive him. This isn't
Sure.
Tomas Hertl. This isn't Logan Couture, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
Occasionally, a guy
So
will be put through waivers to actually set up a trade, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. But teams do like the flexibility of having a guy who's already cleared waivers
right,
if they're going
right.
to add him, so that they can send him back and forth between minors. So that was my thought, was like, okay, Greer's set up a trade, because there's no reason why he would be in the lineup one day and then the next day not, and like
Yeah.
be waived, unless there was like okay, we got a deal going, because then you would take him out. So that
Mhm.
was my thought, was like, maybe he's being waived so that if he clears waivers, he could be traded for another guy who's kind of like a salary cap
Mhm.
dump, somebody like Anthony Mantha, or another guy who's struggling on a team with a lot of salary.
All right.
And that kind of makes sense, because like, you want to try, if you don't have to take back a big salary dump like Anthony Mantha, you should just try and waive Kevin and see if he can go through waivers first and get picked up. Um, that was my thought, was like, he's being traded. There's no
Mhm.
reason why you would do this unless he's being traded. And then it was all of a sudden like, no. So maybe
Nope.
there was. Maybe there was something there, that he had a deal set up and then it fell through. Who knows? Or maybe there was literally nothing, and It's just
Right. I
all
mean,
smoke and
right
mirrors.
now, like, yeah, right now we don't know
Yeah.
more than from what's from that day. I'm still digging at it, so I might find out a little bit more,
Mhm.
But I'm not dropping the story. But
Yeah.
that was a very much ado about the very dramatic, but much ado about
Yeah.
nothing day.
Yeah. The rest of the Sharks week did not go well,
Yes.
including that game against Boston. But we had a few other transaction news. We had Radim Simek, who's been with the team for a few years now, who got waived a couple days ago, 1 or 2 days ago. And this is kind of what we thought might happen just because of the huge log jam at defense and guys
Right.
coming back and getting healthy. Um, and some guys getting out because of injury, but Simek seemed to be the odd man out and was waived and cleared, I believe.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So, any thoughts about Radim Simek or any of the defensive shuffle?
Well, you definitely feel bad for Redeem just because he's been hurt so
Mhm.
much from his very first season with the Sharks, 2018-19. He's a guy that and David Quinn alluded to it that Shimmick's a competitor, always practices well. I mean, he's really in a lot of ways I think a model like number 7 defenseman. He can be, at least if he could stay healthy. And he is a guy that you like to have on your team. But the Sharks have a lot of guys sort of his upside right now. And they have guys waiting in the wings too that haven't got their shot yet. Emberson got his first game yesterday. Ahotiak is with the Barracuda now on a conditioning assignment. They're going to give him his shot. And so it just sort of became I guess a place where Shimmick just there wasn't a spot on lineup for him, and his contract is too big for anybody to pick up. I think he's 2.25 million. If he was making half that, then maybe someone would have picked him up, or he would
Sure.
be tradable. And I don't think the Sharks want to use they have one retainment spot left, so I don't think they want to use it on Redeem. They want to wait till the trade deadline, and maybe they'll use it on a Hoffman or something like that. So there just really wasn't anything to do with him. He wasn't going to play on the Sharks necessarily. And he
Mhm.
still might, with injuries. And, Marc-Edouard Vlasic just got, benched last night. So there might be a spot on the Sharks sooner than expected, maybe.
Yeah.
But at the time of waiving him, there just didn't seem to be like there would be a spot on the Sharks for him. And so it's unfortunate. I know that, I know a lot of people also bemoan his contract. Oh, Doug Wilson giving a bottom pairing defenseman $2 million a year, and yeah, I think you definitely, Doug made obviously a lot of contracts blew up in Doug's face at the end there,
Yeah. Just a few.
but just a few. But I would remind people though that when these contracts were signed, that the cap was expected to go up and
Mhm.
up and up. And so bottom pairing defensemen like Redeem, who did a capable job moonlighting with Brent Burns, right? The first year. Everyone remembers that, right? So a bottom pairing guy that can moonlight in the top 4 and not look out of place, which is I think maybe what they thought Shimmick was, and he didn't turn out to be quite that. But
Yeah.
um, and with in a cap that's blowing up, 2 million isn't if you look at it that way, it isn't as awful as it seems. But obviously, with COVID and whatnot, then that helped make the contract untradeable, along with Redeem's injuries.
And now we've got down on the Barracuda a few. We'll call them veteran guys. Got redeemed down there. Leon Gavanka has been
Kamanka,
doing
yeah.
pretty well.
Mhm.
And I think there's going to be maybe 1 or 2 more when people get
Could
returned from
be
injury.
McDonald. McDonald's the last guy that's
Sounds like it.
coming back. That may be with the Sharks, but may get waived. And
Mhm.
obviously we have a Hotiak down there too, who's gonna who's gonna get a shot at some point this year.
Yeah, so he's going to be on like a conditioning
Yep.
stint for a little while with the Barracuda until he gets brought, or until he can't be on it anymore, I would
Until he gets
imagine.
conditioned.
Yeah, until he gets reconditioned and then brought back up. So I wonder if they just run with 8 defenders the whole year because they probably don't want to lose either Hotiuk or Emberson unless they don't see anything in either one of those players,
Mhm.
then they waive them. But
Yeah.
they're so young that they're 22 and 23. I think they'll probably keep them up, and then that unless there's and obviously accounting for more injuries, they could be pretty useful, especially if somebody
Yeah.
goes out long term. We got a few veteran guys that are kind of getting up in age and may need some days off, basically, including one Marc-Edouard who may need a little while off.
More than a few days off at this rate. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk about a little bit the just some guys that we've or seen throughout the first week that were stuck out or had some stories about. But for now, let's go with the rest of the news of the week, and that includes Couture still being out with injury, as well as Mikael Granlund being out with injury.
So there's good news on Granlund. Granlund's on this road trip. He
Mm-hmm.
participated in morning skate yesterday. It was a full participation morning skate too, which basically means it was basically a practice, just a shorter one. And he participated throughout all of it, and so that's a good sign. It sounds like Quinn is very very optimistic that he'll play on this road trip. Again, Granlund has a kind of injury that you know we don't know for sure, but soft tissue, that sort of thing, right? Where like you want to make sure it's 100% healed, and there's a chance that it can reverse itself, and he's progressing, and then he's not, or he
Mm-hmm.
can be really better, and he can play a couple nights from now. For a second there, I thought he might play in yesterday's game because he was taking part in some of the lines and morning skate, and looking pretty good at it. But I will say that I'm in Nashville now. I saw Granlund after practice, and sometimes you can tell after practice, when a guy's trying out an injury, if he's
Mm-hmm.
unhappy, it's sort of like, oh, maybe it didn't go out too well for him, with his injury, right?
Sure.
Granlund was in good spirits after practice, so I think that things are pointing well for him.
Mm-hmm.
With Couture, unfortunately, he did not travel, which suggests that he's a bit farther away than Granlund, even if their injuries sound similar-ish. So again, I'm not 100% sure on that,
Sure.
but I assume that Couture is skating back in San Jose. Though I need to check actually with David Quinn on that to make sure that he still is, because his
Sure.
skating has been a little like he's skated for a couple of days and he took off a little bit, and that those aren't good signs.
The
But yeah.
the Sharks sorely, surely, uh, really badly miss Granlund and Couture.
Oh,
I'll say that on our offense because I mean not specifically Granlund,
well,
but Couture for
defensively too.
sure, and defensively.
Yeah.
Um, they don't have, and we'll talk about this when we do like the player by player, but the lineup is just not full of guys that should be in like a top six, and it's becoming pretty apparent every single night that they just cannot keep up. Like their first line gets dominated every night, pretty much. They're like occasionally the fourth line will look okay, and decent enough, and then the middle two lines just look terrible most nights. So that's kind of where we're at. So hopefully
David
they're coming
Quinn.
back soon. Hmm.
David Quinn said after the Boston game
Yeah.
about Couture and Granlund that we haven't lost just two players, we've lost six, and I
Mm.
was like, really, David? But actually, though, the point he was making makes some sense is that if you lose those two centers, you also are losing guys that really help your wingers out, which they do.
Hmm.
And so you talked about like how the second and third lines just don't look like, just are sort of non-existent out there, and a lot of it is probably because they have guys centering them that like shouldn't be that high up centering. And no offense to Thomas Bordelot or Jacob Peterson or even a Nico Sturm on a second line, at least. Oh, Nico can kind of masquerade a little better because Nico's is always competitive and
Hmm.
trying trying his butt off. But you don't have. I mean, yeah, I mean that's a big drop off from Couture, who is still, I think, like a top, you know, a top second line center in this league who can,
Hmm.
like Hertl, he can play the 1C for a bit too.
Sure.
And Granlund, of course, Granlund was a question mark coming into the season, but if Granlund is who he was before, then he's not that far from Couture or Hertl. And so you've lost, two of your three best players actually now. Yeah, they're out of the lineup. And again, they also do, to Quinn's point of losing 6 players,
Mhm.
they do, make their line mates better.
Yeah. Hopefully soon. The Sharks really need
Yeah,
them
at
back.
least Granlund. Yeah, well, it should be
Mhm.
soon. Couture, I'm not really sure. So yeah,
Not
we'll have to
sure.
check up on that one.
All right. The last bit of news from this week is the Mackenzie Blackwood kerfuffle. Um, I'll say that. I saw highlights of it, so I didn't watch the entirety of the last game on Saturday. I watched bits
Ah,
and
lucky
pieces.
you.
I know. No, I was at a wedding, so it was I had a reason.
Wow, lucky you. Yeah,
Yeah,
open bar and
and don't
unlimited
have to
shrimp,
watch
shrimp
the
cocktails,
Sharks.
and you don't have to watch the Sharks.
So, well, what exactly happened? And I wonder what the response is going to be about it. So, Chang, walk us through what happened with it first of all.
Sure. So this was near the end of the game. About 4 minutes left. The Preds were up 5-1. Um, Roman
Mhm.
Yossi flew like tried to attack the net and clipped Blackwood in the head.
Mhm.
Sending Blackwood sprawling. Um, but then in Filip Forsberg's defense, the whistle hadn't blown yet. There was a loose puck. And so Forsberg literally jumped in the air and, in effect, body slammed Blackwood, who was still prone on the ground,
Yeah.
to for a reason to get the puck in. And as Forsberg was in the air, then the whistle blew, and so obviously that goal, which Forsberg did put in, but that was waved off.
Mhm.
I don't think up to there's I don't think like no one is accusing Forsberg of being this dirty player. Like he was trying to score a goal there. So even though
Yeah.
on a replay, if you look at it, it looks like he's jumping up like I
Mhm.
don't know if you I don't know if any if I don't know if you ever read Calvin and Hobbes, but like Hobbes jumping on Calvin.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's like that freeze frame moment where Forsberg's in the air. It's like, well,
Yeah.
that Greta, he's just going to be coming down on poor Calvin there. So,
Mhm.
um, anyway, though, so up to that point, I think it's understandable. But what happens afterward is that the Sharks do nothing, and the Sharks on the ice, Matt Benning, Mero Ferraro, William Eklund, Kevin Labanc, Jacob Peterson, to a man, they kind of just let Forsberg skate off the ice. And no one's saying that anyone needs to injure Forsberg. No one's asking for that.
Yeah.
But I think, and I think that some people are mistaken. It's not like, no one is suggesting again that anyone injures Forsberg. No
No.
one is
Yeah.
suggesting that the Sharks need to get into like this fight, etc. But after the after the game, Tomas Hertl expressed significant disappointment that nobody did anything.
Yeah.
And some people are like, "Well, why didn't you do anything, Tomas?" But
He gets
um,
suspended if he gets. I
well,
mean,
yeah, that's
do a next
like
shift or
no one,
whatever.
no
But
one. So he's not saying that anybody's got to jump off the bench
yeah.
and punch Forsberg. And Andrew
Mhm.
Burnett was very, very smart. You notice that Forsberg didn't play the rest of that game. So there wasn't a chance for anybody else to do anything in a normal circumstance. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you can leave the bench and do something, but yeah, then that goes a bridge too far. Because then you probably get suspended, and that's not what anybody is asking for. But I
No.
think that the reason why Hertl was upset, that Quinn was upset afterwards, right? And this is my opinion, actually. I'm gonna dig it. Today's an off day for the Sharks. They flew to Florida yesterday.
Sure.
I'm going to Florida too, so I'm going to question them about this. But I think it's not about hurting the other team or whatever, right? It's more about, at that moment, the lack of engagement.
Mhm.
And do I blame the Sharks for lacking engagement when they're on they're on their third straight loss. They're 0-4-1. They're getting their ass handed to them again, 5-1 at that point, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't blame them for being checked out. But that's still a bad sign, though, if they're
Mhm.
checked out. We're 5 games into the season, and your goalie just got unintentionally body slammed, and
Yeah.
you don't react to it at all. It's kind of like maybe.
I'm a little bit sorry to interrupt you. I'm a
Yeah.
little bit more disappointed in like Ferraro and Benning than I am the three forwards. Only because Ferraro and
Yeah, that's
Benning
fair.
are established, right? Like they're not getting bent. Well, they might get benched, but they're not getting like removed from the team if they do anything wrong. Like Labanc, Eklund, and Peterson are all fighting for spots still, right? Like Labanc has been
I think
scratched. There's the
Labanc's a
Ray
veteran
waiver.
though, and so
He yeah, but
I'm
he's like,
gonna
but either way, he's still like in and out of the lineup. So if he takes a 2-minute penalty there for face washing
No, that I
Forsberg,
disagree. I'm gonna jump
I
in
don't
there.
know.
No one like Hertl said that directly. Like we're losing 5-1. No one cares
Agree, but I'm
for
saying
the
I'm
extra
giving
two
them a
minutes.
little bit of credence in
No,
their mind because
LeBanc
like
doesn't. I'm sorry. It's not to pile on Kevin. Like,
yeah,
he's a veteran there. Like
sure,
if you want to give Jacob and William a little bit of a pass, then
sure,
that's fine. But Kevin is the longer tenured with the Sharks than Ferraro. He's I think the
yeah,
fourth longest tenured Shark right now, or third. The Couture, Vlasic, yeah, and Hertl. Yeah,
hmm
Labanc should know better. Benning should know better. Ferraro should know better. Benning especially, Benning was right next to Forsberg. And David Quinn said something pointed after the game too. David Quinn said that that can't happen. I don't care if it's your
yeah,
friend. That can happen. Something to that effect, right? And guess who played on the Predators for a number of years? Matt Benning. And I assume that he and Filip Forsberg were friends.
yeah.
so there's something to dig there. Yeah. So I will I guess I think LeBanc one of the veterans should have done something.
I
Again.
agree.
You know.
What I'm trying to say is that I
Mm.
don't know what their mindset is there because they're losing pretty horribly.
Well, that's
They've
what I'm
been
saying. Yeah,
losing.
they're
Yeah,
they're
so
they
like
probably were checked out. They were just like, oh,
they're either checked
yeah.
out or they're afraid to make mistakes. And
I don't
and
that
I don't
I
know.
don't agree with that one. I don't agree with because what's the mistake there? If you, I mean, if
I
anything,
agree. I think now
knowing
Quinn is
hockey culture, like Kevin Labanc probably earns a 5-year contract if he
he might,
if
but I'm
he
saying
jumped
that
Forsberg there.
yeah, yeah, and it's good for Quinn to verify that yes, you should defend your goaltender. It's good for him to verify that so that it's in their minds that they should do something.
Yeah.
But yeah, also they're not physical dudes, right? Peterson, LeBanc, and Eklund are
But it's
not
not about being physical
fighters.
though.
I
It's
know, I
about
know.
it's about standing up for your team.
Uh-huh.
Again, it's not about physicality. No one again is asking them to fight Forsberg. No one is asking them to like elbow Forsberg in the head. No one is
Yeah,
suggesting anything like that, right? I mean, let's be honest. LeBanc has taken plenty of penalties in his life, right? So
yeah.
yeah, so another penalty wouldn't have hurt. So
And I would not have been upset at all if Eklund had like thrown
right,
like
and
a
that would
little
have
bit, a
been
couple punches. I think
honestly
it would have been
that
great,
would have been a
but
story if Eklund was the one to
hmm
stand up. Everyone would have been like, "All right,
hmm
go William." And so it's the fact that no one on the ice stood up at that moment for their guy. And like I said,
hmm
I think it doesn't speak to none of these guys, on the ice that we're talking about, right? None of the Sharks, like no one wants to see Blackwood hurt. No one is,
sure.
But I think again, my guess, and again, I'll dig into it. This is just my guess right now, the day after. But I totally get where Hertl and Quinn are coming from, and but to me, it speaks to not so much that like it's a bad locker room, which Hertl made clear to say a couple of times that he thought the locker room was great. That and I believe him. Uh, good guys, people like each other, all that kind of stuff. I believe all that stuff, right?
hmm
But so that may all well be true, but to me, again, it speaks. The larger issue is just you're zonked out,
The
you're
lack of
checked
engagement.
out 5 games into the season, right? Which is
hmm
a bad sign because guess what? We've got 77 more games.
Yeah.
77 more times around the sun here
hmm
that we got to get through. And so, like last year, if you're already checked out, that's a little tough to come back from. And so I think that's a little bit more the issue that we're kind of at that point once again, like we were last year.
hmm
And
Because I think the thing that they've outlined repeatedly since this whole teardown, or since that Greer has started, was like they want to compete. They want dudes that are like heart and soul for the Sharks. And if all else fails and you're still losing a ton of games, at least they could say that we made it, entertaining. We made it like we're trying, and that doesn't show trying.
That wasn't trying. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
just like, let's just get on the plane and let's
let's be
get over
done.
to
We gotta go
Florida.
to
Yeah,
Florida.
get over to Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, so.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm a little bit upset about it, but I do put it more on Ferraro and Benning than I do the forwards, just because of the way that the
You're
forwards
just a
are.
Kevin Labanc lover, so.
I do love Labanc. No, and also, I wish Eklund did like a little bit of a,
Oh, any of those guys, yeah. I mean, like again, you can give Eklund and Peterson a little bit of a pass because they're younger, not as many NHL games, et cetera,
Yeah.
right? But if one of them had kind of, that was, a lot of times you have these opportunities to show something, right?
Mhm.
And that was an opportunity to show something that
Sure.
we may not have known, was
Mhm.
so much a part of their DNA. And
Now, if Eklund drops the gloves and breaks his hand, then we're all like, why did Eklund drop the gloves and break his hand?
But we would have respected the intention at least, though.
Yeah.
But of course, you don't want him to drop. You don't want to be in a fight there. But I think the other part of it too is that hopefully that Eklund and
Mhm.
Peterson, that maybe they learn from it. They learn kind of what they should do the
Sure.
next time, even if they're not the biggest, strongest dudes. That if a guy basically body slams your goalie, like he can't just skate back to the bench.
Yeah, gotta do something. You're still in this fight.
Yeah,
You're
let
gonna win it.
the dude know that, like, hey, that
Mhm.
wasn't cool. Even if like, you're trying to score a goal there. I get that, but like, yeah.
Mhm.
I didn't realize how bad it was. I was, watching it live, and the angle I had, like, at first I thought it was just Yossi clipping Blackwood, which is not great, but it's kind of normal in the course of play when you're trying to crash the net and get to the puck
Sure.
that happens, that you can run into the goalie, right? And the there was a goal that was waved off there, goalie interference, but no penalty called, and that seemed about right to me, right? I didn't really
Mhm.
see the Forsberg thing until later. Actually, Quinn corrected me because I originally we got Tomas Hertl and Nico Sturm first yesterday in terms of
Mhm.
interviews post game, and I referred to Roman Yossi running Blackwood, and then Quinn corrected me and said it was Forsberg, and I watched the replay and I was like, oh, that looks way worse than I thought, because I didn't see the Forsberg coming in late and just basically jumping, body slamming Blackwood until afterwards. Like, oh yeah, now I get why these guys are so upset. And so yeah.
So next time, that's what we want. It's just a little bit more of a fight, but that's okay. Speaking of the Sharks being very, very bad, I think the only bold prediction that I am on track for is that the Sharks will have the worst record in the NHL, and that
Which
one
was
wasn't
not a
even
bold prediction.
not even bold. Our bold predictions, we'll check in on them maybe
Yeah.
every week, maybe every other week, and see how we're doing.
They're looking pretty bad, but I don't think we want to check. I
bad.
actually want to bury this time cap. So
Okay.
but let's see.
My worst one so far is Barabanov as the team leader, and he has 0 points through 5
declare as the
games.
team's leading goal scorer too.
He has 1.
He has 1.
The team leader is 2, so he's
Yes,
getting pretty good.
yes, but he hasn't really got a lot of chances though.
No.
Yeah,
What else
I have
do we
I
have?
have the Sharks at 70 plus points.
Yeah.
And I have Henry Thrun. This one's already wrong. Like
Yeah.
Henry Thrun sticking the whole season with the Sharks, so that
Mhm.
that has already gone wrong. Eklund is not on pace for 40 points.
Nope. He's got 1.
He's got 1.
It was a pretty cool goal.
Yeah, one is on the way to 40. That's true.
Mhm.
Zadina might
Still
score
on the
over 20
team.
goals. Yeah, he's
Zadina
still on the
might. He
team.
said that's a pretty good one because he started off pretty hot. He has 2 goals right now.
Yeah, team leader. Yeah, that's
Team leader.
on pace for 32 goals. Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll see. No, we're not going to revisit this every couple of weeks because I think we'll lose all
Maybe
credibility
halfway through the season, and then at the end of the season, we'll just
sure, maybe
we'll check up on
then.
it.
Maybe
They
then.
don't look they don't look great. So.
It's not
But
looking
you know
good
what?
though. It's not looking
They're
good.
bold for a reason.
Yeah.
Because they're wrong. All right, let's do a little bit of a wrap up of some of the the players or things that
Yeah,
you've
our
noticed from the
impressions,
first
right?
few
Yeah.
week.
Mhm.
Yeah. So just to run down some stats, our points leader is Tomas Hertl, who has 5 points in 5 games. I think we talked about it a little bit before the show. He looks like a top 6 forward. He looks like a, well, borderline first and second line forward, at least on a good team. He doesn't have a lot of help around him right now,
Nope. Yeah,
but
his wingers have been very cooperative.
he's at least probably the most consistent Sharks forward right now. He's a -1, 5 points. Good.
Yeah, I
Kind of what they
agree.
signed him for.
I think people expect a lot from Tomas just because of his
hmm
contract and et cetera, et cetera. But look, like, you know, we talked last year about Tomas putting too much pressure on himself, right? Like, how
hmm
can he not have the weight of the world now on him? Because like he doesn't have. If Tomas is your top center, he doesn't have his 2C and Couture, and he doesn't have a 3C in Granlund behind him. I mean, he's got nobody behind him. And his wingers this year, we talked about Barabanov, right? Barabanov is off to a slow start overall, I think. Declare is off to a slow start. Those are his main wingers, right?
hmm
And so he's not. I don't think he's getting a lot of help there. But through it all, though, Tomas has made some plays. Zetterlund's goal was a great stretch pass by him. Declare's goal was Tomas Hertl a lead pass there. He's been pretty good. I don't think he's been great. He is probably more on the okay side, but not a backhanded okay, like actually okay or decent so far this year.
Sure.
Um, he hasn't elevated his game and carried his team, but I don't even know if that's Tomas Hertl. Like I don't think he is that guy. He's a guy that on a good team is going to be a great part, but he's
hmm
not going to be the a number
He's
one.
not your Sidney Crosby. He's
Yeah, he's just not. That's just
hmm
not never who he's
yeah.
been. And I know his contract makes people think that he should do that, but I think all in all though, let's just say he's not the reason why the Sharks are 0-4-1. So, he hasn't
No,
been
that
problematic.
is
So
not on him.
yeah.
He has the most assists in the team with 4. The second most assists is actually Henry Thrun, which is funny, with 2, who's back now with the Barracuda.
Mhm.
But anyway, back to some forwards. You mentioned like Barabanov is struggling, and Granlund looked okay for the one game, but who else has kind of been struggling from the forward group, do you think?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Who hasn't been?
Yeah, it's
But
true.
let's start with Barabanov, just because you mentioned him. Yeah, Barabanov, he's made some moves, made some plays, but just
hmm Kind of
I think a
fades.
lot of a lot of the Sharks forwards this year, a lot of the guys are expected more out of Hoffman, Duclair.
hmm
They're all in really kind of the same bucket. Even Barabanov, right? I think Hoffman gets a little more flack online for some reason. I don't know if he's been any worse than Duclair or Barabanov. I
I
think
think
they
he's just slower. That's it. I
yeah,
think
he might be
he
slower.
looks a
That might
little
be it.
slower, so people give him a
But
little bit of a hard time because he looks a little bit like he's behind the play.
yeah, but
But
Hoffman has made some nice passes. He's
sure,
done some good things too. Like Barabano has done some good things and Declare, but just not a lot of good things.
yeah.
And that's all those guys. And so all those guys, you hope that game comes around for them.
hmm
And if it doesn't, then yeah, it's going to be a long season. Yeah, looking at the stat sheet's pretty ugly. Declare's got 1 goal, Hoffman's got 1 assist. Barabanov has been shut out for the season,
Yeah.
and just have all of them to a man just haven't created enough. Uh, Hoffman's a shooter. The first 4 games of the season, he had just 4 shots, 1 shot a game, and I know he was on the point of the power play, which is not a shooting area. That's
Sure.
a little farther. You're more of a distributor there, but Hoffman had 4 shots against Nashville, so he had as many shots in one game than he had for the entire season. The same number of shots in one game that he had the before that. So
Yeah,
There's a lot. I mean, even like in terms of veterans, so we can throw in a Luke Kunin, who has had a lot of chances, especially the first couple of games, just hasn't finished. And I think it's a good sign that he's getting the chances. I mean, I do. I'm not just trying to be just paint a rosy picture. Like he's getting to good places on the
yeah,
ice. That he is getting there, so he looks like he's skating well after his knee surgery. But Kunin's not a pure finisher. I think he's a decent finisher, but
sure.
he's not like a pure 30 goal, 40 goal, whatever
I
kind of
think
guy, right?
I think kind of like what we mentioned earlier with the center depth being so poor is that all these
Mhm.
guys are like complementary wingers that generally, if they have a good center who's doing the majority of the dirty
Right.
work or the hard work, they can thrive, but they
Yeah.
don't. So they're
Right,
just
right,
kind of
right, right, right. Yeah,
flailing.
you're missing the position of strength for the Sharks this coming into the season was, I thought it was center,
Hmm.
because between Hertl, Couture, and Granlund and Sturm, but
Yeah,
now you're missing two of those four, and we can, yeah, like you can tell the difference, right?
yeah.
Um,
I think
so
the fourth line has looked okay, and
yeah,
typically when they have enough depth, they run Sturm, Zadina, or no, sorry, Sturm, Zetterland, and either Smith or another winger there, basically.
yeah,
I think it's looked good. But
yeah.
they're like finishing their
I agree.
checks. They're like getting a little bit of zone time. They don't, but it's like a consistent unit, right? And they have a good center for a fourth line center there, so it makes sense that they're doing okay
It's
on the
always
fourth
a
line.
bad sign though if your fourth line is your best line. Like
Yeah,
I've like any game I've covered where I've noted the Sharks or other teams I covered. Oh, the fourth line's having a really strong night. They look like the best line out there. Is a game that the team is losing almost every time.
yep, yeah. And it's just because the
So
fourth line's the only one that can generate any possession because
right.
they happen to beat the other team's fourth line, but that doesn't matter because the
Yeah,
first
because
three
they're not
lines are getting
scoring.
rolled.
Necessarily from there. They're not on the power
Yeah.
play or whatever. And so,
Hmm.
yeah. So, on paper going to the season, it looked, like there was some promise with
Hmm.
Duclair, Hoffman, and Barabanov, kind of in your winger group and Kunin, but obviously
Hmm.
hasn't manifested itself. And right now, I'm thinking more about it. It's hard to not think about that, like as great a track record as Duclair and Hoffman have, they're also coming off of bad seasons. Hoffman has
Sure.
had two straight down seasons and he's 33. Duclair coming off of Achilles injury last year and only scored 2 goals with the Panthers. Looked pretty good in the playoffs, but that's so we talked, during the summer, we try to paint or we try to look at the bright side of things. If all these guys hit, the
Yeah.
Sharks suddenly have like a good looking forward group, including Granlund and Couture being healthy, right?
Hmm.
We didn't really talk that much about what if these guys don't hit.
Sure.
Because I did mention it, like the Sharks brought in a bunch of guys to score in Zadina, Duclair, and Hoffman. Between those
Hmm.
three guys, I think those three guys scored 20 goals last year, maybe 19 goals between the three.
Yeah.
So it was sort of a lot of hope, optimism, and based on some,
Hopium.
yeah, hopium, based on some real things, like it, obviously, Declare and Hoffman have good scoring track records, but
Mhm.
in terms of the what have you done for me lately, they hadn't done a lot lately, and they haven't done anything lately for the Sharks.
Yeah. So besides that, let's wrap up with the forward group with just talking about the young guys,
Hmm.
and then we'll move to the defense and the goaltenders. But the young guys, Peterson, Eklund, and Bortolo, specifically, I guess Zadina as well. Uh, Kind of varying degrees of success there. Zadina's done well. I think it's interesting he got moved down to like the fourth line, the pseudo fourth line like, for the
I, I
last game.
I I have a word about that though. Yeah.
Sure. But then I think Eklund has been he's competing. I will say that Eklund is
Yeah.
skating really, really hard. And he did have one good goal. He is still trying to figure out exactly how long he can hold the puck for. There was one play in particular in Boston where he lost the puck behind the net and went the other way, and they scored.
Yeah.
Um,
Forsberg wasn't buying his spin move pass.
yeah, Derek Forbort kind of just it was just the funniest thing watching that goal because he or watching that play because he Eklund spinning,
Yeah.
like going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Forbort, before Eklund does his last turn, he turns before then and just cuts him off. Like he knew he was going that way before he did it.
It's like
Because
it's like a little like point guard, like all these
yeah,
like fancy dribbles, around like the Kembe Mutombo, some 7-footer, and then finally when this little point guard goes up for a shot, the 7-footer just raises his arms up to
yeah.
block.
So but I do appreciate Eklund trying, and he is one of the few guys in the Sharks that can hold the puck for that long.
Yeah.
That's something. But yeah, he's still learning. But I would keep him on the team. Bordelot, I don't think has looked particularly impressive. I think he's getting a little bit lost in the physicality of the NHL. Just watching him, he's getting ground out on the boards a lot, and he's losing the puck during those physical plays against the wall. And he's also just not creative right now. So
Yeah.
and he's asked to do a lot, right? Like second
Right.
line center, third line center, whatever he's playing.
Right.
And I don't think it's working out so far. But
Yeah. Let's go back to Eklund too. You
sure.
see some good flashes too. Really good forecheck actually the last game against McDonough. Took the puck from McDonough. That's a very veteran defenseman, and so you see a little bit of that. But you also see, you mentioned Bordello losing some battles. Eklund has lost them too. I think the
Mhm.
Boston game, I know in particular, was a little tough for him in those kind of ways. Some of the just getting the puck taken off of him on the
Yeah.
breakout and things like that, right? And I think that's going to happen with younger, inexperienced players like Eklund and Bordello, and also smaller players like the both of them are. But
Mhm.
I think Eklund has shown a little bit more in terms of just on the forecheck and a little bit more than Bordello has. Bordello, though, like you mentioned, there's been a lot, heaped on him.
Mhm.
He's playing higher up than you maybe want at this point of his development. I hope that I hope it's not, I don't know, I think that he is ticketed back for the Barracuda when the Sharks get healthier, and it
Mhm.
could be as soon as Granlund rejoining the line. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that's the case, but could be though. Because that would be the natural spot for Granlund to take there.
Yeah.
But anyway, though, I hope he can go down with kind of a good attitude and work on what he's got to work on, because you still do see some good talent out there.
Mhm.
But yeah, like it doesn't, it's not quite enough at this point though to kind of I make an impact.
Sure.
I think Eklund's not been, I would say, good to start the season, but
Mhm.
I think he's sort of on the bubble, like kind of, like he feels close. He feels closer
Yeah.
than Bordello just because of I
I
think
think he's
Eklund is better
figured
in other areas of the games than
I
than,
think
than
yeah, I
Bordello.
think he's figured out the speed and the pl- this the the pace of play a little bit better, and he seems like he belongs a little bit more.
A little
Yeah,
better. Yeah. I
a
mean,
little bit more.
I don't think either of them have been particularly good, but I
Sure.
do think that Eklund's been a little
Hmm.
better. With the Zadina, I like a lot of what Zadina has done offensively.
Hmm.
A lot of energy offensively, and I think he and probably right behind Hertl have been the Sharks' best offensive players so far.
Sure.
But Zadina's very rough defensively, and I don't think people notice that enough. And I wrote a little bit about that, I think, after the first or second game. Which goal? The Vegas Nick Hague goal.
Hmm.
Uh, Nick Hague was wide open there, right? And yes,
Yeah.
Capo Kakinen needs to stop that shot, but the reason why Hague is wide open there is because Zadina was running around defensively.
Hmm.
And yesterday you saw too with don't remember which goal was scored, but the one where Zadina and Emberson get caught up together too.
Hmm.
And Zadina probably should be trying to cut off the point there. But I
Yeah.
think
Send
Zadina
it
is trying to
along.
chase somebody along the wall. And I know
Hmm.
Zadina's been on the PK, but it doesn't mean that he has a refined defensive game. I mean, the PK hasn't looked great, and that's another area where they're clearly missing Couture and Granlund, two guys who would definitely be on the PK. And then your PK becomes Granlund, Couture, Sturm, and Kunin, which makes sense.
Sure.
Instead of Sturm, Kunin, and really just been a carousel of guys down there. Duclair's been there, Zadina's been there, Hertl's been there, and just it hasn't been good. It's
Mhm.
Eklund too. I think they tried Eklund a little bit there. It's been ugly there.
Yeah.
And so I think Zadina still has a lot to work on in terms of on the defensive side. I will say I did ask Quinn yesterday because Zadina didn't play a lot yesterday, and Quinn said, Quinn didn't say it was anything particular. He just said that sometimes when you got 11 forwards, you get lost in the shuffle a little bit, and so we'll see. We'll see if that's Quinn not wanting to kind of roast not feeling that necessary to roast this guy in public like he roasted Marc-Edouard Vlasic.
Sure.
But so we'll see on that. But I guess the reason why I focus on Zadina's shortcomings is that people seem to think they've seen some of the goals, they've seen some of the energy. It's great, right? But like he is not a finished product by any means. Like not even close. And so like
Yeah.
he's not untouchable in the lineup, I guess is a way I'm putting it. You know what I mean? Like there are very obvious things that he still needs to improve on. And before you start, kind of counting him as, like he can't be moved in the lineup. What's he doing on the so on and so forth,
He's
quote
got to
unquote
score 20
line.
goals this year, so he's got to find a way to get to 20 goals.
Well, he's gonna stay in the line for other reasons, though, and so I do
Sure.
like he's competitive, and I don't think there's any questions about that. He's been okay on battles. He's always willing to engage, which I've liked. Like I've seen him knocked down a couple times, which I like because he's willing to get in there and get knocked down. And willing to go up against bigger, stronger players. So I've liked that, and I think he'll be fine. But he's not finished. Yeah.
Let's round out this episode because we're going a little bit long with our interview as well.
Okay.
With
Sure.
the defense and goaltenders.
Okay.
So we have obviously news that Vlasic had gotten benched basically in the last game. The defense as a whole, how would you rate it? Because I'd give it D plus. I don't know what you would give it as. Maybe C minus.
I'm thinking of a Dave Chappelle, Rick James skit that I'm not going to repeat on the air. So, but if everyone something about thumbs down, all right. So,
but it's not been great.
It hasn't been great, but the forwards haven't been great. It's all connected too. So I'm
sure.
definitely not going to put it all on the defense. The forwards have not helped out on the forecheck. They've made the defense look bad. A number of occasions. I wrote about that actually yesterday, I think. The James Van Riemsdyk goal. A lot of that starts with poor neutral zone back check, forecheck by the Sharks, which puts Ruda in a very bad position and Vlasic in a very bad position on that goal. I did want to mention one more forward just to make sure that we mentioned him. We forgot to mention him. Fabian Zetterlund has been pretty good to start the season. I think I didn't really like his game yesterday, but in general though, he has shown just a direct north-south game, using his body, taking the body first, it's actually very pornographic by David Quinn, but David Quinn talks about catching flesh and before the puck, basically take the body before you worry about the puck. And he said that especially against Carolina, the Sharks are too worried about, trying to dig at the puck and win the puck instead of take the man first. And then worry about the puck, after that, and so Zetterlund though has been a guy that has been pretty good about catching flesh. And so anyway, I want to give him some props. And also he scored his first goal as a Shark too, which I'm sure, must have been a weight off of him because he went scoreless last season after, 22 goals. But
my partner's nickname for him, she nicknamed him the Swedish meatball. Because he's very he's stocky and he's built and he plays pretty hard. So the Swedish meatball is her name for him. Sorry, Fabian. I mean, maybe he likes that nickname. Who knows?
He actually looks kind of like one of the characters that I think about on Aqua Teen Hunger Force. So
a little bit, yeah.
I don't remember which character, but I think if you guys know the show, then you'll know who I'm talking about. So,
but he's built. He's
built. Yeah.
Anyway, so he's been good. I agree.
He's been pretty good.
Physical,
yeah,
which is what they want, and he's a good fourth liner, I think, and that's kind of why maybe not why they got him in the first place, but they saw something there, and I think he's a good fourth liner.
I think he's got potential for third line. I think talking with scouts last year, and I had to lean on that because he looked kind of a bit lost
Mhm.
with the Sharks. So
Yeah,
I had to lean on what the scout said, and scout said, yeah, this is a guy that's going to be not just a like third liner, but a good third liner.
sure.
And so it looks like he might be on the way to that. At least he's shown some of that promise. But anyway, let's go to the defense. And where do we start?
um, it's not been good. I think one thing I will note is that
Yeah,
Ferraro, and there's still a lot of goals he's on the ice for. But that comes with him being, the probably the team leader in time on ice for defense, I imagine.
sure.
Yeah, he is 22 minutes a night. But he is shooting a lot more. Like he's just using his shot to try and get some offense from the
Hmm.
point. So I do think that that's an interesting thing because Ferrara's always struggled to find offense. But I think if he keeps that up, he's going to put up points just because there's nobody who's launching the pucks from the point.
He actually leads the team in shots, which is not
Insane.
necessarily a
Yeah.
good thing, but it's good
Yeah.
that he should. You're right though, because prior seasons he probably was maybe
Hmm.
maybe a shot a game. Right now he's at 14 shots after 5 games. I know he had one game where he had like 6 of them, so it's a little bit skewed
Hmm.
that way. But overall, yeah, I think you like him being just direct. Don't be too fancy with the puck. Just get it on
Yeah.
net. One thing he does do every once in a while because he skates so well is he can attack the net. He can
Hmm.
be your late man coming up and provide put pressure on the defense that
Sure.
way because he is so fast and just kind of attack the net. And might not be a lot of finish or touch, when he's crashing the net with the puck, but just get it there, and then maybe the forwards will clean it up and bang home a rebound, that kind of stuff, right? And so yeah, he's done that. I've seen him do that a couple of times. I would say too, yeah, I couldn't believe what I saw yesterday, but you should watch this. He said he hadn't watched the whole game. Kyle Burrows actually was the best looking Sharks point man that I've seen this year.
Wow. In that game.
No, in that game at least. No
Interesting.
joke. Because Granlund was supposed to have that job, but
Hmm.
Granlund got hurt the second play of that game, and
Hmm.
so the power play didn't look that good that game, and it's maybe not fair to judge Granlund based on that game because he was basically playing hurt from the second shift on. Um, and then Hoffman was on a point. Obviously did not. One of his turnovers led to, I think, the Carolina shorthanded goals. So Hoffman didn't look good there. I think they tried Knizhov, they tried Ruda there.
Yeah, Kanisha was interesting, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it was
But
very effective either.
watch. I think it was their second power play that Burrow showed a little escapability on him. One play, I thought that he was going to lose the puck for sure on a 1-on-1. He came up with it.
All right.
Direct passes, direct shots, and I would say for Burrows too this season at 5-on-5 that he's done there's been a couple times too where he's read well the point man on him. I'm sorry, the winger that's defending the point for the other team
Hmm.
has been too aggressive on him. I think it did against Boston. I think Lucic kind of reached or got too aggressive, and Burrows just skated past him, made himself available in the slot, and had a good chance from the slot. And he's done that a couple of times this year, so he's made a couple of good reads offensively.
Sure.
I'm not saying that Kyle Burrows is going to be a 40, 50 point guy,
There it
but
is.
but watch that power
Yeah.
play. It's for that one
Interesting.
power play. He looked he looked the part. And for what it's worth, Hertl said that yesterday was the best power play that they've had all season. So
Mm.
that's with Mr. Kyle Burrows as PP1. So I don't know if he can keep it up, but if he can just do that basic job of, I think David Quinn put it well. I asked David about it before the game yesterday, and Quinn said, we're just asking him to move the puck and shoot when he's got a chance. We're not asking him to be Picasso.
That's a good one.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so no Picassos here on the power play, but I'm gonna give a Burrows a shout out for that. No, actually, Burrows to me has been a pleasant surprise. I mean, just his physicality, right? Has
Hmm.
he had another big hit yesterday. I'm not, maybe it was Evangelista, but so Burrows, I would say, has been a pleasant surprise. Mario, going back to Mario a little bit, just to cover him a little bit. I mean, he doesn't look that much like to me when I watch Mario, I see a guy that is a very capable one-on-one defender.
Mhm.
But he can't defend 5 guys. So if things aren't going well, like he does like overextend himself and try to do other people's
Sure.
jobs, and that gets him in trouble, right? So he looks roughly the same to me.
Yeah. Except for he's shooting more. That's about it.
He's shooting, yeah, and then we'll see how that holds up. He's sometimes, obviously just 5 games, so we'll see. But
Sure.
if it is a trend, though, it is a good trend. So I
Mhm.
agree with you there. So hopefully he keeps that up. Everybody else, Knizhov, I actually really liked his first game against Colorado. I don't know if he's kept up the
Mhm.
consistency, but he does skate so well, which I like. And
Surprising
yeah, it's
after his injuries and everything that he's still got the
right,
legs,
right,
but he
right, right,
does. Yeah.
right, right, and he's big too. So
Mhm.
hopefully he can play himself into sort of I guess a more consistent impact defensively and offensively too, because I think it's really important for a guy like that to always make that first pass, always make that connecting play, and that's where I think he's run into some trouble before in terms of the consistency. Who else on the defense? Yeah, Jan Ruda is a guy that I'm hoping to see more from. I
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet. I think it doesn't help that he's not the fleetest of foot, and so he's not getting a
Yeah.
lot of help. Kind of, he's getting like specifically that Van Riemsdyk goal, right? He looks the worst on it,
Yep.
but he got put in very bad positions by his forward just on that play. Like it was Coyle pushing back Ruda. Coyle built up speed, and I think it was supposed to be Zetterlund. Zetterlund was supposed to mark him, but Zetterlund got
Mhm.
beat up the ice like. Zetterlund basically was turning as Coyle was hitting his stride.
Sure.
So Coyle had basically a huge head start on Zetterlund. I think Zetterlund was kind of spying out the stretch pass, wasn't tight enough, paying enough
And
attention
it
to
was
Coyle.
it, it was Ruta who also had that basically where he cut into the neutral zone and tried to pick off a pass, and then
Right,
this
right,
was when
right, right.
Thrun. I think it was against Vegas, right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
big. That was the Nicholas Waugh.
Mhm.
And I still think Thorne could have been better there, but yeah, that was bad
Ruta
on
kind
both
of
their
like dove,
parts.
yeah,
Yeah,
straight up.
it was maybe a little too aggressive there. Ruda also had that game, and I, I don't pay much attention to individual Corsi, but that Colorado game, where Knizhov actually was the only. I think Knizhov had like a 47 Corsi, which was the
Mhm.
highest on the team.
Oh yeah, yeah,
5 on
yeah. That
5. But
was
Ruda had a spectacular like 5 shots for 41 shots
mhm.
against for a Corsi of like 10%.
Oh boy.
Again, I'm not like a hard
Yeah.
believer in that for just one freaking game, but 10%
There's
is
a
pretty bad
it's a
though.
good segue to probably to Vlasic because I think Vlasic had like a historically bad game
Well,
against
that's
Boston.
yeah. I mean, that's historically on like on
Mhm.
some measurements, right? So yeah.
Historically to
So
for Corsi, I mean, or
yeah,
not
yeah,
like
yeah.
historic, but
So
it basically was really really bad. And
what
then
was it
obviously
again? What was I didn't look at the
it
exact
was
number
something
on the
like
Vlasic.
3 Corsi for and like 19 against, or something really really bad, or something. I don't remember exactly,
Okay.
but it was bad. Um,
But yeah,
so
he
it kind
subsequently
of
the next night he got benched against Nashville. So yeah, so
just kind of because I was really hoping that Vlasic still had a little bit left in the tank because last year he wasn't
mhm.
awful, awful. Like he
Yeah,
was
last
better.
year he had some juice.
Yeah, and I'm kind of worried that we're running out of juice. And I
Possibly.
wonder what's possibly. I wonder what's going to happen in the offseason.
I
Because he
mean,
would
it's
be 2 years
always
left. There's a
yeah.
possibility they could exercise a buyout, or they could also
We're
just
coming to the point.
figure it
Yeah,
out. Yeah,
we're
so
coming to that point. Yeah.
we'll have to see what happens throughout the year. Because if he keeps sitting consistently, I think that's where we're going to head to. But all right, so that's our defense.
Yeah, I mean, I'll finish up with, or I'll mention a little bit of Vlasic though, just that
Sure.
it's easy to throw dirt on him just because he's 36, right? But we did last year too, and he came up last year with actually a decent season. Not
Yeah.
like Olympian Vlasic, but he was okay last season. And
Yeah.
and and I had thrown dirt on him because Bugner had basically shuffled him off into he had scratched him a night and was playing Vlasic like 15 minutes a night. Had taken Vlasic off the penalty kill the last
Hmm.
couple of years there, right? and Quinn was able to come in and trusted him, and Vlasic responded well to it. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready to close the book on Vlasic, but and also I'll admit too, usually when I watch these Sharks games, I watch the younger players because that's the kind of the future of the Sharks. I don't really watch the veteran players as much, so I'll start watching Vlasic a little more closely to see, because Vlasic, is always the last couple of years is not the greatest, not the fleetest of foot. So if you're looking just for that, well, you're not going to see like a whole lot there, right? And so you've got to watch him really closely, I think, to see what's going on in his game. And so yeah, so I need to do that.
Yeah, so the stat was actually not Corsi for. It was expected goals for, and he had a 3% expected goals for that for his efforts there, which is 13 minutes. They gave up 16 shots during his 13 minutes, 2 goals, 2.8 expected goals, and he had nothing offensively, essentially, like 1 shot attempt. So yeah, it was a very, very bad game for Vlasic. Anyway, let's quick word, like 1 minute about the goaltenders, and then get on out of here. I think they've been good.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. Blackwood had an amazing game that kind of got highlighted by that 51 save effort, something like that. And I don't know if he's obviously not going to continue that high, and he's kind of trended a little bit down after that. But they've been solid, and that's kind of what you're hoping for teams that are, or for getting shelled every single night, is that they're solid enough that occasionally you'll win a game because they can keep, the score underneath 4, essentially.
Yeah. I would say Kakkonen has sort of like each of the games he's sort of given up a goal that maybe you kind of want back, and so I think he does need to clean that up a little bit. But but though all of them have given the Sharks that like chance to win. They have clearly they're giving the Sharks a chance to win, because the Sharks have been outplayed in basically every single game. And Blackwood for the first 5 periods of his Sharks career was the greatest, maybe the greatest 5 periods of Sharks goaltending in Sharks history right there. I'm talking about the 3 periods against the Avalanche, and then the first 2 periods against the Hurricanes. The Sharks were up 3-2 in a game that they should have been losing 6-3 already, really after the 2 periods, and they ended up losing 6-3 because the Blackwood's magic couldn't hold through the 3rd period of that game. But over by and large, though, they've been pretty good. Just don't let Filip Forsberg body slam your goalies, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Keep them in the lineup by make sure they don't get injured, guys. Anyway, all right, let's get to the Scott Hannan interview, and then we will see you all next week. It's been a very long episode, so all right, guys. Hope you have a good one. Nice to see you. You might recognize Scott Hannan these days manning the microphone for NBC, but you might also recognize him during his time patrolling the blue line for over 1,000 games in the NHL. Hannan was drafted by the Sharks in the first round of the 1997 NHL entry draft and quickly became a fan favorite for his defensive excellence. He played in 2 stints for San Jose from 1998 to 2007, and then again from 2013 to 2015. He played for Calgary, Colorado, Nashville, and Washington in a grand total of 1,055 regular season and 100 playoff games. He's here to talk about his new role with NBC and how he sees the Sharks moving forward during this rebuild phase. So everybody welcome Scott Hannan.
How's it going, guys?
Well, Scott, I just wanted to start off first that we have a bit of a family reunion here on the show. And no, guys, it's not between me and Scott.
You never know. Yeah, so when I was a kid, when I was like 13, 14, a like kind of distant relative told me that my cousin-in-law had been drafted by the San Jose Sharks. And then my first question was, what's the San Jose Sharks? I wasn't a huge hockey fan at the time. But ever since then, after meeting Scott and all that, I became a huge San Jose Sharks and hockey fan. So Scott was actually like my first introduction into the world of hockey. So that's our family connection to some distant relatives.
Go. I'm honored by it. Oh, hey, back in Florida.
Back in Florida, exactly.
I'm not going to lie. San Jose, when I got drafted, we had to take me something to look where San Jose actually was. But obviously it made my home there now. Wife, kids are playing hockey down here. I even got my American citizenship last year, so it was.
Congratulations! That's awesome.
Thank you. Big steps. Big steps.
Yeah, what you said reminded me of Patrick Marleau. You were drafted the same year as Patty in the first round, too. Patty said his first impression of San Jose was he thought it was by the ocean. Of course, San Jose is like a good hour from the ocean. So what was your first impression of San Jose?
You know what? I thought so, too, at first, because, I mean, I didn't think I was going to get drafted by San Jose. It's actually a funny story. I kind of bombed my interview, I thought. Needless to say, I guess I didn't. So I had to look up San Jose afterwards. There was a couple other teams I thought maybe. So I was looking at those places. But obviously, I fell in love with the place. I actually surfed this morning. So even though the ocean's not right there, it's close enough for me.
Where are you living right now? Like, how close are you to the ocean? I guess you're not in like downtown San Jose proper, because that's a good hour away. But
yeah, no, I'm out in Almaden. So it's kind of like I live out in Almaden.
Oh, wow.
But,
okay,
so
right there.
But I can be in the water in 45 minutes. I time it pretty good.
Not bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. Especially when you grow up in Canada, Vancouver, to surf, you'd have to almost go six hours driving and a ferry ride over to Fino. So this is way
that was
better.
always the claim to fame to living in Florida too, is you're never more than like 45 minutes from the water, no matter where you are, pretty much, because it's one skinny little state. But yeah. I miss the water too.
Scott, since you bring it up, I wanted to ask then, your draft interview, you thought you bombed it. Let me guess, because I've heard stories, not about you, but stories about Tim Burke being a particular hard ass in the draft interview. So is that what happened to you?
Yeah. Tim really there was a bunch of guys, and he I don't want to say railroad, but he asked a lot of really. He tried to push your buttons, and needless to say, he pushed a little bit of my buttons. He was going after some of my D partners, my team, and everything like that. And, sometimes for him, talking to him afterwards, he's just looking for a reaction. He wants to know that what type of character you have. And, needless to say, he laughed. We had a good laugh about it in Pittsburgh. That's where the draft was, right after, they called my name and I got down to the table. So, obviously everything went on to work out pretty good.
What's he saying
total
about
bomb then?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I can't say it was the worst interview I've had. It worked out all right for me. It worked out all right.
Well, what's he say about your junior, your partners, your teammates? Is it kind of like maybe he says something bad about them, and he's kind of waiting to see like if you throw them under the bus or if you like defend if you're a good teammate?
Yeah, he kind of said, like my D partner, and that. He was an older guy, Derek Diener, and that he was, he wasn't a very good player. He's like, you kind of, did you carry him or did he carry you? It's hard to read what type of defenseman you are. And I, so I was kind of like, what's this guy talking about? I'm like, well, he must have been pretty good. He got drafted in the 3rd round. I mean, somebody likes him.
Yeah.
And he's like, just because you don't. And then we started kind of like just being combative a little bit. You know, and he started asking me about, when you go to a team party, what kind of guy are you? And it was just questions out of left field. You know what I mean? Like they just want to get you. And I'm like, is there anybody else at this interview table? Why don't you ask them some questions?
Somebody else throw me a softie, right?
Somebody jump in here. Where's the lefty? Where's the lefty?
But clearly, though, he wanted you to stand up for your teammate. He liked that.
Yeah, obviously he was looking for a reaction, right? And looking back on it, I can see why, right? Not knowing the interview process, maybe I should give a call to my agent and maybe he could have warned me a little bit, right? He didn't prep me very well for that meeting, or maybe he did. Maybe he did. He's like, I can't prep you. Just go in there and fight him. So
yeah, I mean, he knew you were going to stand up for your guys, and that's probably what Tim wanted to see. You mentioned a couple other teams interested. Who were they?
You know what? Honestly, I heard rumors about Boston. I knew Boston sort of liked me. Oh man, it was so long ago. There was a few teams out there that, I thought the interview went well. Boston, they were kind of right around that pick too. And I think that's why, San Jose had to move up to get the 23rd pick. So I think that they thought the same process, that they kind of knew where that was going to lead. So they wanted to scoop me up. And then, hey, like I said, it worked out.
Wow. I forgot that Boston had a third first-round pick in a draft because famously, of course, he drafted Jumbo #1, Sergei Samsonov a little bit later, and a third one. So they could have had, just like San Jose did, Marlowe and
And I
and Scott
think it was
Hannan. Yeah.
Nick Boynton.
Oh
Was
yeah,
it?
another defenseman. Yeah, another
Yeah.
hard-hitting
No, actually,
defenseman,
so I
right?
got it. I got it. It's
Yeah, you
Ben
got it.
Clymer. Ben
Oh,
Clymer.
Oh, Ben Clymer. Okay, but it was
okay.
Ben Clymer. All right.
Okay.
What
And
pick did he go?
he was 27, but it was the first second round pick.
Oh, first or the second
Right.
round.
Okay, so that's what it was like. Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause
that's
I
the
think
one.
that Boston was eyeing me for that position. So
Okay. Okay. Well, talking about your career, obviously you had a long, great career with the Sharks. But one of your claims to fame is that you are the only Shark to ever make his NHL debut in Japan. And I mean, that's just got to be such a trip to start your NHL career. And there's so many things you hear about the NHL, and you're thinking, oh, it's going to be, maybe it'll be in Boston, maybe it'll be in Toronto, maybe it'll be in my hometown, Vancouver. But instead, it's Japan. And so, anyway, can you just sort of describe just that, not so much the hockey part, but just the whole experience of being in Japan and all of that?
yeah, it was quite the experience. I mean, guys walking around. I think Bernie Nichols and Joe Murphy. I think were walking around in kimonos because you get out there like a week before, so they were getting right into it. Dinner down. I think Andre Zuzin bought a katana sword. Back in the day when you could actually, I think he carried it back home on the upstairs luggage, right? So back, people don't understand that. It's like a katana sword, and we didn't want to put it down below because it could get damaged. So we'll just carry the katana sword right on the plane.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? No, obviously it was, great experience to, a different culture and to be able to be in Japan. And another claim to fame, I think I led the league in scoring for 2 weeks because I had 2 points in my first game, but nobody else played for like 2 weeks. So
well, actually, I wanted to put you on the spot here, so I looked this up. So 4 other players had two points that night in Japan. It was a 3-3 Sharks Flames tie. One of them was your teammates. So can you name any of those players that were tied with Scott Hannan for the league lead in points early in?
Well, I think Darren Fleury.
Okay.
Was it Bakes? I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna
tough.
Let's take this. Yeah, it's tough. You're gonna actually a couple of these names you'll be like, like I hardly remember them, and I have all their hockey cards. But okay, Mike Ricci, he had 2 points, so that's your teammate, of course. And then Dave Roach, Jason Weimer, and Bore, but not Pavo, Valerie Bore. So.
Oh wow, yeah, I would never have gotten that. Never gotten that.
Amazing. Well,
okay, so here's another toughie for you. When we talk about how tough Tim Burke was, and got to ask you, how tough was Daryl Sutter? You played for many coaches in the end there, but you always hear stories about just how tough Daryl was and how he kind of changed the culture of the Sharks. When he joined them.
Daryl was tough, but he was honest, in my opinion. You always knew where he stood. I know he was hard on a lot of guys, and it was a situation where it was sometimes a love-hate. But I think that he taught me, especially as a young player, to not take anything for granted. I had to come in there and I had to prove myself defenseman. It wasn't like I was racking up big points. And you never could take a shift off. I think that and everybody responds to different things better. I think that I could handle the tough love, and I think I responded well to that type of motivation. Maybe not all the time, but most of the time. And the funny thing is you always knew where you stood. Daryl would be the first person I could pick up the phone right now and call him, and he'd answer probably on the second ring. And if you had an issue, he'd be right there to help you. And that's where you knew Daryl stood. And when I got sent back to junior that first year, because I was up for quite a while after Japan, but I got sent back to junior, and when he bag skated me that morning, him and Paul Baxter, and with all this, like, there was scouts, and I think Dean Lombardi was up in the crowd, and I got bagged for like 45 minutes. And afterwards, he pulled me into his locker room, into his office, and he cracked a beer, and he said, "All right, now go back to junior and have some fun." So it was just, he was just a different personality. Obviously, you could say that he could wear out his welcome in some places, but as far as changing a culture and turning a thing around, I think he does that, really well when he steps in.
Well, the most important question here is, did he offer you a beer?
He did offer me a beer. Yeah.
Okay. What you guys have? Keystone Light or something like that?
Yeah, we might have to cut that out because technically I was only 18.
I think the statute of limitations has disappeared on that. I think Daryl, you and Daryl
turn him in. I'm not going to turn him in.
Yeah, I think he'll be all right.
Yeah, mine was a 0.5er, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the NA beers, the non-alcoholics.
Yeah,
exactly.
He snuck
you had an old duel, so we'll say for the record, you had an old duel. So, I want to ask you too. For that time, it was so important, and it parallels the Sharks now. The Sharks obviously are trying to grow, trying to rebuild, and it's so important to have veteran leadership, to kind of guide the youngsters. And the Sharks have that now. Guys like Anthony Duclair have connected with Thomas Bordeleau, obviously Hertl and Zadina. And back then, back when Daryl was, starting off and you were starting off, and, Dean Lombardi was a GM for a couple of years, Dean did something similar. He signed guys like Bernie Nichols, like Murray Craven, brought in Mike Vernon, Bob Airy, just guys like that to help provide leadership into the room. And just for yourself, no, you started a little bit later than a couple of those guys there, but anyway, who sort of guided you back then?
I think if I looked at it, the biggest names were probably Brian Marchment. He was my first consistent D partner. I played with him a lot. I stayed at his house a lot. I had campfires with him a lot. I think I read books to his kids a lot. So there was a lot of different things there. Todd Harvey, Scott Thornton. I thought they brought in a lot of really good guys, and I played with those guys for a while. Mike Ratchey, and even though I don't look at him as like old in that aspect, he was a great guy to have around. But I think me and Mushy playing together quite a bit, and I go back to Gary Suter, Jeff Norton. I mean, the list goes on, and I think the biggest asset is they were great guys, great players, but I think even if I might be off on the years because I felt like it was so long ago. 02-03 was when they kind of that transition happened from the vets to the youth. Mm-hmm. And when Mushy and a couple guys got shipped off, the Sharks missed the playoffs that year. And Mushy kind of called me up afterwards, and he said, okay, now it's your turn to take it, right? And he kind of understood his role in a way. Like, I think right. He was there to play, obviously, but he understood, just kind of like in some way, I felt like when I passed, I don't want to say pass the torch because I came back, but, there was guys, and I knew what type of vet I wanted to be. And I wanted to be that type of vet that those guys showed to me. I knew I wasn't going to play every game when I came back, but I tried to work as hard as I could in the gym. I tried to work as hard as I could on the ice. I was positive with the younger guys. I wanted to see them succeed. And I wanted to show that not just by what I said, but how hard I worked. And I think, that you look at for so long, and I'm not saying they don't have that now, but for so long, there was a culture there with Jumbo, with Patty. I mean, we were in the gym, we were lifting hard, we were going after it where everybody kind of had to do that, and I think that was something that I learned early on in my career. And I think that that's kind of carried on, and I think that you asked me, what do you think they need to move forward through this youth movement? It's things like that.
Yeah. You actually kind of started to hit on it though, the transition to the youth back in like 03-04. Obviously you guys had like a very good playoff run that year. And you yourself got a lot of praise for shutting down as much as you can shut down this player, Peter Forsberg, in the second round against the Avalanche in that playoff series. So what was that like whole playoff run like with the changing of the guard and how far you guys got?
Yeah, that was special. I think, when you face a team like Colorado and you see how many stars they had on that team, and the Detroits and all those teams that we kind of butted heads with for so long, and we couldn't seem to get over the hump. But I think that playoff series, and that was our whole team. And I think, I got a lot of fanfare because I was matched up against Forsberg, and and there was a lot of good battles. I think I had the hair going back then, and it was back in the old school days. You could rough and tumble, you could kind of hook, you could hold, you could get away with a little bit more. It was a lot more physical in front of the nets, and I think that kind of showed there. And I think the fans sort of loved that. Patty had an unbelievable playoffs. I think we beat St. Louis in the first round, and he had a bunch of goals. And I remember how loud that was in the barn. And, that just kind of carried through. Unfortunately, we ran up to, Calgary, and I think I'm not going to say we deserve better. Kipper had a great playoff run. Jerome McGinley was going pretty good. And, it's sometimes that's just the way the playoffs go.
And then obviously you guys had all this momentum built up in the next year during the lockout. So there's like no hockey. You guys came back strong again and then eventually got the jumbo trade in there. But yeah, it just feels like there was a lot of momentum and then you guys had to pause after.
Yeah, that was disappointing. I remember, going into that and all the uncertainty, and then the lockout happens, and you're ending on a high. I went to the World Cup that year. We ended up winning gold in the World Cup, and then you come back and you're like, there's no way we're going to lock out for a year. You're not gonna. That's not going to happen, right? Nobody's that crazy. And then, and probably one of the mistakes I made is not going to play somewhere. I expected us to be playing. And after coming off the World Cup and after coming off all that, I kind of expected them. Like, there's just no way. And I trained at home and I skated a little bit at home. But, that was probably one thing that I wish I went and did, just not really being aware that we had even though they warned us and it could happen, I just really didn't see it. I was too optimistic, apparently.
Well, what did it mean to you, though, to be selected to the World Cup, to be recognized? Usually guys that don't put up a lot of points, right? It's a little bit harder maybe to get recognition, be it from fans or from even just people, observers inside the game. And so what did that mean to you to be honored in that way?
Yeah, that was pretty special. There's a pretty good story too. I was out looking for homes in Kelowna, and I didn't. The buddies were all calling me. All right, you think you're going to go? Because if you remember, there was a bunch of defensemen that went down. Chris Pronger was injured, and so a few defensemen went down, and there was all these rumors about who the defenseman would be that would end up playing. And I was out looking at a home, and the boys were all calling me up. They're like, I'm here and it could be you. I'm here and it could be this. And, and then all of a sudden I get a call, and then it was like, hello, Scott. And I'm like, yeah, well, I've got Wayne Gretzky on the phone. And I'm like, and I had a buddy named Bubba. And I'm like, Bubba, quit calling me on it. Okay? It's not Gretzky. So like, I end up hanging up the phone on him. And I'm like, and it turns out the same number calls back, and it was kind of like weird before. It was like, you had the old Nokias. I don't even know what, a BlackBerry or whatever. And it was like, all right. And then he's like, no, this is Wayne Gretzky. And I'm like, okay, maybe. And he's like, so, obviously it was a huge honor to get a call from, Wayne and on a team. And then, in all honesty, going from a spare part really, because I didn't play in the first few games. I got in a few exhibition, but then more injuries happened. Jovanovski went down. Who else went down? I'm gonna miss out on that. But anyways, another defense went down. I ended up getting in. I ended up playing, and then ended up being on the last shift when we won gold. So
awesome.
It was obviously a pretty huge experience to win it in Toronto and in front of family, friends, and it was a great experience.
Well, congratulations there. You finally somebody finally shut down Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But speaking of sort of just how you were, recognized at that time, one thing that actually Alex Ovechkin said this about you. This was, of course, Ovechkin comes in a little bit later to the league, a couple of years later, but he once called you the league's toughest defenseman to play against. And so, what did he mean by that? And what does that mean for a guy of his, obviously his caliber, to say that about you?
Well, there you go. I get the guy that's probably going to pass Gretzky, and I shut down Gretzky. So, I got the luck to play with him later on in my career. He's such a great ambassador. He's such a huge player in a game. I think I just matched him physically too. He sometimes he tried to overpower. I mean, I'll admit I'm not the most skilled guy as far as the way the game was played, but I could read the game really well. I think that I'm a student of the game. I learned tendencies. I knew where guys wanted to be, and I tried to fight guys from getting that position. I knew where guys really like to be on the ice. I liked where they like to shoot. And I tried to read off that and play off that and play in your face and not give time and space. And I felt like at that time of my career, I was really good at that. And, and some guys, and when you're playing an 82 game schedule, it's hard to battle. And I go back to the comments from Daryl. I learned not to really take any nights off, and I really focused on that, and I took pride in shutting guys down. And, I knew there was always going to be big games, and I knew if I could accomplish that part of the game for my team, we had a chance at winning. So, no matter how skilled we were.
And to reverse the question, who was the toughest player for you to defend over your career?
Wow.
Got to give it to Alex now. He told you that.
Yeah, I know, right? It's hard not to say, Ovechkin. You know what? I will say Sid was towards the time. I wasn't matched up. And, when Sid came in, there was times when he played out east. I got to play against Yager a few times in that big body. Those are the guys that are the hardest, I felt. The guys that like to control the game. Jumbo was like that when I played against him. It was different for guys that looked to get the pass or looked to hit open spots. Those guys I found were sometimes easier because they didn't have the puck all the time. Whereas there was guys that wanted the puck and had big bodies and like to control it. Mario Lemieux, I got to play against him a few times, and it was like you try and hit that guy. He was 6'6", like he had all the hands in the world. He was huge, obviously, Iggy was a battler. Sid, Ovechkin, they were tough. I'm not going to lace it down to one guy.
Okay.
But, I got to match up against a few pretty big guys, and sometimes they got the best of me, and sometimes I get the best of them. So,
and with the lockout too, the things kind of changed in terms of the rules and the opening up of play and everything. How do you think that affected your career and like you were saying earlier, like less obstruction, that kind of thing?
Well, obviously coming into the league, if you looked at where defensemen were prior to those rules, you looked at the Mike Rathjes, the Darian Hatchers, and, the huge guys that could just take up a lot of space. And I'm not going to say that they weren't skilled, but it was a dynamic change from how you trained. I remember pre-draft of 2004, you couldn't draft a guy below 6 feet, 220 pounds. I was seen as like a hybrid, and I was 6'2", 220. Do you know what I mean? So it was seen I could skate. So there was like a hybrid. I could move the puck and do this. And now you got guys that, are 185, 175. And I think that the earlier teams saw that and saw some people were kind of like, some teams had, their blinders on and didn't see it coming, or they kept refuting it and trying to go big. And obviously, you got guys like Victor Hedman. There's always going to be those rare individuals both ways that can do a combination of both, like a Chris Pronger back in the day. But I think what it made you do is you realize, maybe did I struggle right out of the gates because I was a little blind to it? I'm not sure. It changed the way you trained. That's for sure. I had to shed pounds. I think at my heaviest when I played before, because you had to be, was 225. You had to be to battle those guys that I talked about before, right? And I think my last year in the league at 36, I was 213. So, and I cut down, I cut a lot of weight and tried to, get as fast as I could. There was a lot more powerlifting compared to size. So, those are the things you learn. And I think that ultimately, even though I was 36-year-old, I was a smarter and maybe even a better hockey player than I was early, because the game was chip it off the glass, get it out when you were in trouble, and win 1-0. And we know that that's not the game anymore, right? With the penalties the way they are, the talent that's in there, you can't play defense, you got to play offense. And it's an interesting way. I was, like I said, I think I was a better player at the end of my career than I was at the beginning.
Yeah, that was actually an interesting thing, because I think it was Jake Middleton who said something earlier, a couple years ago. It was like, the NHL will pay you $1 million to be able to chip it off the glass and play solid defense. So I think there might still be that role for that kind of defender, but it's just you got to find your place in the NHL.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, I agree with you. I'm not saying that there's no way of playing defense, but you even look at Middleton. I mean, he's not just he's not just a guy that chips it off the glass.
He wants to pretend like he is.
Right. He likes to pretend that he is. Right. And we all laugh, and we're good at being like a little bit condescending to keep the focus off. It's like, but if you look at the way the game was played back in pre-04, like you literally chipped it off the glass and you hooked and hold, and you had your stick. If guys went wide, you could hook around and put your stick in between their legs and ride them for about 20 feet. You could interfere every dump in. You could skate over and get in front of a guy. And, it was prior to 04, if your defensive partner got hit on a dump in, that was your fault. Whereas now, get out of the way, free for all, and now you got to make those little bump plays, those little chips and all of that. It's a completely different game the way it's played.
How, this is the year after that. How good was Vlasic when he came in? It's like a 19-year-old. Was it similar kind of thing that you mentioned, like just really good at reading the game kind of thing? Or
I think he came in pretty polished, and you know what I mean. He was calm. Nothing really rattled him. And I think that he had a quiet confidence. If you looked at the way he played, I was his D partner, and the kid came in and he could play right off the bat, and he could skate. He was sort of like what you'd call even a hybrid of a hybrid, because it was like when you were coming off those big guys, you had those teams that just didn't want to say no, right? They just kept, having them or trading for the big D, and he kind of took it on. And, he was great at shutting down other teams, and, had a little bit of offense, could make the first pass. And, he's had a great career as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like, he's been so kind of, I think, like criminally underrated. And also that rookie season, I mean, 19-year-olds just even today don't come into the NHL as defensemen and come in and play 20 minutes a night. It takes a special guy to do that. So we wanted to mention Marc-Edouard, but here's another guy, and I'm not sure if you were too special to him. I asked Jason Demers if he had any good Scott Hannan stories. And he said, this calls a question your how good you were in the room, Scott. He said, the year we played together, he told me if he ever got healthy scratched, it's my fault.
Oh, JD. And he probably claimed that he carried me to 1,000 games as well. Me and JD got along great. He was he was a young guy, and he had that flair to him where I was always the guy that liked to ride guys in the room, and you kind of like to come in and have fun, and the chirping and the back and forth is the best part about the room that you miss. And JD was fun at giving it and fun at taking it too. So Daddy was he's such a great guy. We still text each other, and I went down and met my son, and we went down and watched him play last year when he was still, kicking tires. And he got called up and got a 700th game in the NHL. I thought that was amazing. No, he's a great guy. He's one of those teammates that I had a lot of fun with, and we got to play a lot together, which was kind of cool. He was the right defenseman, and he claimed that I could just get him the puck and then he'd break the puck out. And then I said, as long as I take care of you defensively, kids. So, and he's running and gunning up there. So no, it was great. He's a great guy.
I'd like to have Tim Burke question JD about your pairing, and hear JD talk about, I carried that dude. I totally carried that dude.
Sorry, you really broke up there. I was all streaming. This is the complications of online.
Oh yeah, am I good now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, yeah. My internet here isn't the best, but we can move on from that though. I had to get to something kind of unpleasant, and this is 2014. And actually, I talked with Jason Demers about this, and talked to him about the reverse sweep and what happened there. And talking with Jason, he talked about how maybe there was a little bit of letting off the gas after you guys were up 3-0. He also mentioned that at that point the Kings players were kind of texting some of the Sharks, saying stuff like, just like, let us out of our misery, just finish us off. Jason also said that Daryl Sutter, who used to coach Brad Stewart, called Brad Stewart and said something like, "What are you doing to me, Stewie? Why are you doing this to us?" Stuff like that. And so anyway, can you just go back to that series and just sort of, what happened?
With those LA series, I mean, if you look at, I believe it was even the year before when they beat us in 7 in the second round.
Sure.
I thought we dominated that series. I thought that we played really good. Jonathan Quick was out of his mind. We controlled the shots. We controlled the pace. I go back and play that out in my head, and I think that we could have easily taken that series. And then you go into the next one, and I think that's the weird thing about playoffs. You look, did we deserve to be 3-0? I don't know. The first game, yes. Second game, and it slowly you see how the odd man rushes, the give and take, and
sure.
It wasn't as one-sided as it looked. Was LA a bad team? No. Can you win a coin flip sometimes? And I think that especially that when we were 2-0, that 3-0 was a coin flip. I think we got a little lucky in that game. And LA just started turning the corner, and they're a good team. Should any team have swept that series? No. Did it deserve to be a 7-game series? Sure. And you'd like to sit there and say, you got to close those out. I think in some ways, in the playoffs, we've gotten our butts handed to us sometimes. I think that we've had some close calls. I think there's been some where we deserve better. The Stanley Cup is not an easy one to win. That's why people rarely, get to do it twice, why they rarely get to hear, and you think that the one game or the team that's going in to be the favorite, you look at what happened to Boston last year, right? Boston has the best season, and then they go out in the first round. Now, were they the worst team, or did Florida get lucky in, scoring with late in the third period and then winning it in overtime? That's where the heroes are always written about in those playoff games. And those games happen in the regular season sometimes, and it's not the be all end all. And that's sports. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting there making a cop out here. That was one that hurt. That one would have been a nice one to win. And then, to see how far, and to see what LA did with that. And, that one still haunts me to this day, for sure.
Maybe a little bit lighter of a topic, or maybe this is also going to make you feel like the one that got away, but
I don't think it's that light.
Sharks. Yeah. What's the best Sharks team that you were ever on, you think, and the one that you think should have won it all? If you can remember. They probably might go together a couple.
You know what? The year before that San Jose team where we lost to LA in the second round, I thought we were phenomenal. I thought we were a great team, and I thought we had all the mixings of, going a long way. I thought the series we lost to Edmonton in the second round, I thought was a great team. Edmonton coming back. My memory is going to be a little bit shot, but how I remember it, at least how it haunts me to this day, we were up 2-0, and it was the third period, and they scored with 10 minutes left. You know what I mean? And they tied it up, and then we went to 4 OTs, and the 4 OTs, and you're gassed at the end of it. I think I had 52 minutes that night or something like that. You score, and then they score on something where it's a risk. And, who was it? It was Rolison saved Jonathan Cheech on a 2-on-1 where I still don't know how he got there. And Cheech put it in a good spot. Did he double clutch? Sure. But I think he wanted to make sure, and you're in OT and you're like, there's no way, right? And then they score on one where it's a shot from the blue line. It double tips to a rebound, right? You love to say that, people sit there and argue if Cheech was a clutch player, he would have scored that. Cheech is a pretty clutch player. He scored 57 goals in a year, right? That's just sports. And were we on the wrong side of the coin a lot? Yeah, I'll admit that. And, the President's Trophy out the first round to this and that. There were so many times. I thought Calgary that first year, you go back and you say, if Calgary, we win that, Kipper was there, the trade, this and that. I thought we matched up good against Tampa. And, we had a situation where we were up, we were down 2-0, then we win 2 in their barn, and then you're kind of like, where are we going with this? And then, they win. But if we win that series, do we get Joe Thornton? Does it carry us through, right? Because you may not have that situation happen. So, I don't know. There's a million different ways. It's always fun to look back. I still wish, I got the chance to hoist it one time. I thought I had great teams, and I thought we had a really good run. Speaking of Ovechkin in Washington, when I got traded there, we went from not being really relevant, not relevant, I should say, but at Christmas time, we were at a 10-game losing streak when I got traded there. And it was like, wow, you were in the tank. And then we went on to finish first in the East. And then we
guys had a good series against Tampa. I remember that year.
Yeah.
It was in the first round, I think. Yeah.
No, the first round we played New York. But then,
that's right.
Why am I going to forget the name? And he was my D partner. He had a horrific, Dennis Weidman had a horrific leg injury. So if I could show it on the podcast, I would. It was he had compartment syndrome off of a nothing hit in his leg.
Oh my God.
And he was a big loss for us, a power play guy. John Carlson was young, but like he got injured and he had compartment syndrome. They had to split his leg really wide open, and he missed the whole playoffs. And that hurt at that time. We went from being a dominant possession team, and we ended up running into Tampa, and Tampa was good. They scored some clutch goals, and I think that Washington team was still a little young. They hadn't learned how to sort of win. And when things got tough, it was like, you focus back on the one-on-one, and then you go figure they end up winning it later on. And Ovi's Ovi. He's a great dude. He's obviously a great goal scorer. I'm glad to see those guys get to obviously get a cup there too.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the 2012-13 team. I don't know if that's one that's usually mentioned as much in terms of the Sharks teams that were close. Obviously, there's the President's Trophy team and the Jumbo's first year. Chichu scoring all those goals. But the 2012-13 team, do you just kind of chalk that up to just one guy stopping you guys in the second round? Because you mentioned that you thought that you guys had the run of play during that series.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And the original question was the team I played on. So I didn't play with the President's Trophy team. Sure. But I think that was the feeling in the room. I just felt like we had it. We had it going. We felt like, and I know a lot of guys will say that when you're in the playoffs and, things are going well. But I thought we were playing really well. And, you looked and, obviously LA was a pretty good team. And I thought we controlled the pace of the game in a lot of those periods. And, it was a battle. We had some great battle against that LA team. No doubt about it. And, did we end up on the other side of it a couple times? Yeah, but I thought we were really close. And that's probably what gives me the best reasoning behind we could have won those, because that's how close it was. And, they won a cup in there, know? So we beat them. Is that ours? I don't know, Yeah.
It's a lot like that in Sharks history.
Yeah.
Tell me about
it. Scott, I just want to check that your time is okay. We have a few more questions about TV and about the Sharks themselves this year. Is your time all right?
Yeah, I got a little bit more time.
Okay, cool. So first, I wanted to congratulate you on sort of your increased role on the broadcast. Can you just let us know what you're doing now? You're going to be on the pregame, postgame a lot now.
Yeah, I was, I know with Curtis Brown leaving, I had done a little bit, and I'd started working back in during COVID. I'd done a lot of the, the in-game color with, Dan Rusanowski on the radio. Yeah. But with me, obviously I love it. It's a lot of fun. You get to talk a little bit of hockey, and, for me, was it managing working into my schedule. I coach my two sons down at the Junior Sharks program, AAA and Single A. So I only get so much time. So it was nice that a lot of games fell on Thursday night and I was able to come on, and it's, and it's fun. It's a ton of fun being on the air.
Yeah. So it's something that you see yourself kind of going forward with as you move forward in your post-game career.
You know what? I'm the type of guy, you talk to people, it's take it as it comes. I like right now my kids are of an age where I get to be around them a lot. I get to coach them on the ice. Awesome. And I don't like to go on the road really. So like that was a big part of maybe stepping away from the color, because I think the color is a ton of fun as well. Like being able to get there and, more in the game, you get to watch it. Whereas, it's a different animal pre and post. Yep. Brody's awesome. He's great to work with, and it's a different experience. And I'm glad I'm getting that experience, and it's fun. You get to still keep your foot in the door with hockey, and Mark Smith's on the broadcast, and they got some other guys. So it's great. And it's a lot of fun just getting around there and talking hockey. And like I said, keeping your foot in the door. And, maybe I can steal a few things to throw at my 13 AAA team.
Love it. Can you talk a little bit about the challenge of kind of like staying positive about the Sharks, or staying positive but honest about where the Sharks are in their rebuild, like on the air or off the air as a fan?
You know what? I'm not gonna lie. It's difficult because I've been there, and you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And you got to be honest with it. And I think the hardest thing about maybe the last few years is most of the Bay Area is pretty smart hockey people, and it was
Mhm.
that rebuild on the fly. And I think the writing was on the wall that things weren't. You look at all the teams that are winning right now. You look at the teams how they get there. They can't get there through trading, and they can't. It's all built through the draft, and you got to have the depth. And and if you look at that, I thought that was hard to be. But you know what? And I go back to this year, and I bring my kids down to the game just even the other night, and you're like, wow, you're going in there against Colorado, and you look. There's no hiding the fact that let's be honest, we don't have a McKinnon, a Makar, Rantanen,
Yep.
like a Jonathan Taves, those type of star power, right? But my kids at the end of that game, Dad, that was so much fun. You see it, and that's kind of where I'm at with it. As long as a fan and as my kids are fans, is it entertaining? And man, that
Mhm.
game was entertaining. I thought they battled. I thought
Mhm.
Blackwood had an amazing game. Because it's going to be hard. I've been on the both sides of both those things. It's not fun to be in that room. It's not fun to know like it's going to be a hard year, but you come out, and I hope that those guys prove the media and everything wrong. I really do, because I know being in that room, it's sometimes you can do some amazing things with teams that don't really have some things going on. Like I think we had that in Colorado one year where things just started clicking. Some young guys started clicking, and the vets seemed to come in together, and we did better than people thought. But it is hard sometimes to talk about that stuff on the air, because
Mhm.
ultimately you see that it could be beneficial to be near the bottom for a few years.
Sure.
Edmonton's done it, Colorado's done it, and are those fans complaining right now that they got a Connor McDavid or Cale
Yeah.
Makar and a McKinnon? And I was there in Colorado when they
Oh yeah.
had Matt Duchene, Ryan O'Reilly,
Mm.
Paul, Stasny, um, and they got rid Cam Stewart. They had a lot of guys that they drafted that were good players. Everybody was like, these kids are going to be good, and they traded them. They weren't happy with what they got, and then they got the McKinnon, and then they got,
Mhm.
what I mean? Did they get lucky? With Makar. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, Heiskanen's a pretty good player too, so it's
Sure.
not like I don't know if
Yeah.
it's mix or match, but I think that's the way you got to do it, because then you get to own the contract for a little while. You can build accordingly, where it's really hard to fix that through the trade program.
Sure.
I
Sure.
think
Sure.
if you kind of give it to Sharks fans as that, like, this is where we got to be for a few years, I think they would accept it. It's just kind of sometimes it felt like it wasn't fully sold as that. It was kind of like this middle ground where we didn't know where we were going, kind of thing.
I think you're 100% right. I think people were smarter than that. They saw the product on the ice, and they weren't entertained. And now you can try and get excited. Like, is
Yeah.
everybody going to work out that they draft now? If you look at the percentages of draft picks that play 500 games, 400 games, 300 games, it's slim, right? But you still got to do it through those, right? So, and sometimes it's a long process, or sometimes you can get lucky, like Dallas did. Like Dallas drafts Heiskanen, Robertson, and Ottinger in the same draft. And if everybody would have known Robertson was going to get 100 points, I guarantee he wouldn't have gone in the second round. And Ottinger, you know what I mean? So, like, you can have those drafts. I go back to San Jose getting, Pavs, getting those guys,
Well,
Couture.
getting you and Patty in the
You and
same
Patty in
draft.
one
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Like, the guys that can play those, like, I mean, I don't remember the exact one, but to get two players to play 1,000 games in as a draft pick is pretty big. So you look at what
Yeah.
you can do with that, and I think they're doing a great job with that now. Mike Greer, he's not hiding from it, and I think they're doing a great job hiring the people that they have in the front office, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, the Sharks broadcast sort of well, not the booth, but the broadcast in general might have a really exciting new addition, and that's your old buddy Jason Demers. And so, just how excited are you to have some witty repartee with Jason coming up
Yeah,
soon.
it's going to be great. I was just talking, with them the other night. As I found out, I was like, they got to get us both on there. Brody won't get in one word.
It'd be a great show.
We could tell some pretty good stories. He's, like I said, it's going to be phenomenal to have him on there. He's a great guy. He's got lots to say. That's for sure.
Yeah, he sure does. And also, actually, another one of your former teammates that you brought up, I actually wanted to touch on it, even though it's not TV related. But Mark Smith, you coach with him too. And so, just how awesome is that to get to do that with one of your former teammates?
Yeah, former teammates, and a guy that my first roommate. We were roommates together, and now it just comes full circle. I mean, me and him have maintained a close relationship since he moved on. I moved on from what teams we played together on, and to get our kids both 2010 birth years, and so we're getting to coach together at 13 AAA down at Sharks, and the kids are having a pretty good start to the season, which is nice to see. And it's just fun. I never thought I would enjoy coaching youth hockey as much as I have. It's pretty cool to get down there, and obviously to get to coach with Smitty is pretty nice as well.
You guys also had a similar hairstyle for a while, and the reason why I bring that up is just a kind of a funny aside. One day at SAP Center, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, I got to apologize to Mark for this. Someone walks in and has kind of a faux hawk, but my glasses are off, and I'm kind of doing my hair in the mirror, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, Scott, what's up?" Because I saw the full hawk, and I was like, "Okay."
We might fool some fans this year being on the pre and post. So he might have a little surprise for some fans here when they see his haircut. So it'll be pretty good.
So this is my on-the-air apology to Mark Smith for mixing you up with Scott Hannan, but I think it was understandable. Like,
what are you kidding? That's a compliment for Smith. He took it well.
Yeah. No apologies.
So Scott, we just wanted to wrap. Thank you so much for your time. We just wanted to wrap off with just a little bit of a discussion of just the Sharks this season, especially their defense, obviously, because you played defense for such a long time in the league. And one of the guys I wanted to ask you about, just kind of your thoughts about him, because he's sort of, I think, a polarizing figure among the Sharks fan base. And I want to talk to you about Mario Ferraro. And on one hand, there's the guy that, he's a team first guy. Everybody loves that, such a, infectious, loud, great locker room guy. You see him on the ice and he plays with so much energy. He's frenetic. He's up for any challenge. But then, though, there's the other part of the fan base that, they look at it, the dashes that he's accumulated over the years. Also, maybe the offense hasn't kind of developed for him as maybe some people would like. And I don't know what you think of like sort of the analytics of of judging defensemen that's out there, and I think those stats are very tough to use on defensive defensemen. I personally don't think they've ever done a good job of evaluating that. But just in general, though, it is sort of like sort of a split camp, I think, with Mario in terms of just like for some people, he's, going to be the new Mr. Shark. Everybody loves him. But other side of it, thinks that maybe, he, came in as a 21, 22-year-old playing so many minutes. And, maybe that's, was a little tough for him, maybe unfair to him too, in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you touched on it a little bit. I think analytics, they've never really been good for defensemen on bad teams.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
also,
if you're not pushing play and there's a million different ways play gets pushed. Is it one player? Is it what the small things he does? Is it a 5-man? Is, obviously it's easy when you look at guys like McDavid and McKinnon and, they can drive play themselves, but those are really special players. I mean, I think I can tell you this, there's many bricks that create a house. And having energy guys and having guys that are great in the locker room are crucial bricks when you're laying a house. You want good character. You want good guys in your locker room. That's where it all starts. And I can tell you when the feeling's good in the locker room and everything else gets expelled on the outside, you can do some special things. And as far as the analytics or where a player is going to play, is he going to be an offensive threat? Does it develop? Those aren't always things that when you draft a player, when their first year is coming into the league, and everybody, you got to find your your niche, and you got to find, obviously I hoped I was going to be manning the first line power play when I stepped into the league. I had a point a game. I was 20 goals in the WHL,
Sure.
but people's assets are different. And I think that Mario, it's young. He's still early on in his career, and you got, a bunch of young guys there. And I think he's a great guy to have it in the locker room, and we'll see where it plays out. But they're going to need to strengthen every part of their lineup, where guys ultimately end up slotting in according to that lineup. That'll be left to be down the road.
And I wonder your perspective on this with Mario. That this is just my opinion, but my opinion is that so much was thrust upon him in terms of just responsibility, in terms of a lot of the parts around him, right? The team just wasn't as good, as it had been in past years, and so much was thrust upon him at a young age. And a guy like him, and I interact with him in the room. I see him on the ice a lot, and just like he's a guy that wants to do everything. Again, we see that with his energy on the ice, his frenetic energy. But that can kind of bite you though, when you're kind of trying to do other people's jobs, kind of. And so I don't know if you see that with Mario a little bit, that just that kind of enthusiasm and just that his frenetic nature, like on the ice, like that like you mentioned, on a bad team, that really is tough. If Mario had started off like you started off in 1999 with a better Sharks team, more veteran team, more successful team, that really could have insulated him maybe and helped him maybe develop better.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, it's one of those things, like, you said it there, when you're trying to do other people's jobs like that. I was never a person that was worried about stats. If there's a breakdown in the corner, I had my guy type of mentality isn't very good. When you play on better teams, sometimes you got to find the way you fit into the league the best. And when the Sharks don't have parts that are fitting in the right order, maybe people are playing above where they should be, maybe, right? And when those things get slotted in the right order, like I said, every brick is going to be important. And I think energy guys that can play the game, and, is he going to be a guy that manning the power play? Yeah, I don't see that as far, what I mean? That's not what I see of him. Can he prove me wrong? Sure. Put him on with more pieces around him, maybe things get better. So those are the type of things that, as the team moves on, gets more draft picks, they start figuring this out. We're so early in this thing, and it's hard sometimes to put it all together right now. And you start, saying, oh, it's this person or this person. And I know how that goes. I've been a part of that on both sides of it. He's the reason we're going to get better, and maybe we should ship him off. So like, it's interesting how the world of sports works that way.
Yeah, I think you already touched on it. Our last question was mostly about the analytics of defensive defensemen. Is there anything you look for specifically about a defensive defenseman that okay, this guy could probably stick in the league for a while?
I don't look at analytics. I don't look at that. I watch the way they play and what they're looking at. Their play away from the puck. Are they what's their head doing? How are they reading? If I looked at one guy that I thought, it'll be interesting to see him grow this year is Henry Thrun. I thought when he came in last year, you looked at the way he played away from the puck. I thought he had some good reads on rushes, which is the hardest thing for a defenseman to make those multiple reads where is the threat, right? And, I thought that was something I did really good in my game, realizing, where the threat was coming. And I thought he did that well. It'll be interesting. They've got some journeyman defensemen, some guys that are getting older on the team, and some guys that have had some injury problems. If you look at Simek and Knizov, like, where are we going to end up in 30 games? Where are we going to see? And that's what I'm looking for these first set of games. Where are those guys going to be? Which defenseman am I getting here? You know what I mean? Because with Thrun, it was such a small sample size that, I think that's what I really want to look at moving forward. Is he going to learn? How quickly you're going to learn from mistakes? These young guys are going to make mistakes. You know what I mean? Eklund and Mortalo and all these guys, they're going to make mistakes. It's how quickly can they learn off of it? And, they're going to go through their pains, and we'll see where they are in 30 games, 40 games, 50 games,
Well, Scott, the last question for me, just wondering, because it's interesting to thing you bring up. When you talk about how defensemen, read, away from the puck, what are you looking for specifically with that? Just for fans watching or people at the game, what can they kind of look for when we're talking about, to judge guys like Mario more fairly or anybody else, Nikolai or Henry Thrun, where, to judge them more fairly when, there's so much going around them, like the team is, not quite in place yet.
Yeah, well, that's a hard. It's hard when I look at the game. When I look at defensemen, I watch what their head's doing. Where are their reads? Like when I say that, it's sometimes pretty easy to play on the puck defense. You know what I mean? But if you're constantly reading a rush and you're picking up late guys, I remember when I was coming down, if I was looking at rushes, it's how well do they control gap? Where are they controlling gap? Are you controlling it off of the turnover? How quickly are you reading a turnover in the offensive zone that you're now looking to create gap on the forward that potentially could get the puck?
Sure.
Because that stuff's really important, especially when you're playing against top players, is, that initial push into the zone after a turnover to try and slow down guys like McKinnon and McDavid, because they have to look up and not see a ton of space in front of them, or they're going to pick up speed and create. How quickly do you do that at the red line, the blue line? Can you read depth, the layers? Where's that third guy? Are you talking to your other forwards? How quick of reads are you looking for quick bumps to, in the offensive zone off dump ins? How quickly are you making that first read? And, I think that those are extremely important. It's the stuff that, even ultimately, I think you look at the best defenseman in the game, you look at Makar and you look at those guys, they're great on the rush, but they're also really good in their own zone off those quick bumps. They don't skate the puck out as much as you think they do. They're really good at little bumps, little plays, little inside plays. And, I always remember when I played, it was like funny, people would ask, well, what'd you see there? I could remember plays from 2 games ago down to where the stick was to where it was, who was coming down on a 2-on-1, if he was a righty, lefty, where he wanted his shot, who I wanted to have the puck in his stick. If it was a 2-on-1, obviously, those are all the things that you can't be inside of a guy's head, but watching the game, you try and, I try and look for how his head's on a swivel and things like that.
Ryan Miller mentioned something similar when we had him on the podcast, was just from a goaltending perspective, like knowing your shooters and knowing what they like, where they like to be on the ice, kind of thing. So it's interesting to hear that from like a defenseman, that you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, like if you didn't know who was coming down you on a 2-on-1 and you knew who you wanted to have take the shot, if he was going to get a shot, or how quickly you play a 2-on-1. Some defensemen are so quick at accepting 2-on-1s versus, can I get to that guy before that other guy joins the rush? Can I slow him down enough to be able to get my back checker into the play? Can I sweep through? Can you do a million different things? And it's amazing talking to young defensemen. Not a lot of that gets taught, even to the point where some of the guys that got drafted, you're coming out of the USJHL and wherever they come from, it's like some of them have never heard stick on puck or this and that. It's kind of a very interesting dynamic with young defensemen. So it's interesting. I try and look up for all that stuff.
They're just taught to skate it out.
Yeah. Or just hit that guy.
These days, just skills, skills.
Sometimes that's it. Sometimes when you're young and you're growing, you're so physically dominant that it's like he's great because he can just outskate everybody. But then sooner or later, if you get lucky enough, you're going to run into there's not, like I said, there's only one Connor McDavid in those top 1% that they can keep doing it at the NHL level, right? Like now you got to learn how to play the game. Really, like some of that learning happens at the NHL. You got to really adjust the way, like, wow, that worked before. This is not working now. And how quickly can you think and read the game? How quickly can you get your hands? And you're constantly growing. I went through countless guys growing up in minor hockey that you're like, he's going pro, he's going that. But, it's how quickly, it's what's between the ears. And if there was some secret sauce you could can to develop that would be amazing. You guys let me know.
I'll let Mike Greer know. I'll sell the formula first.
That's right. There you go.
Multi-millionaire after that one. Scott, thank you so much for joining. This is awesome. This is really like illuminating interview from just your playing time and some of the ways that you see the game. So thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, no problem, Keegan. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
See you, Sheng.
Yep. See you, man.